land on which we meet today and pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Please note that today's meeting is being live streamed and can be viewed by the general public via Council's Facebook page and later uploaded to Council's website. By participating in and addressing those present at the meeting, you consent to any information you disclose, including any personal information or sensitive information being recorded and uploaded to the website. The prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech your blessing on the Council. Direct and prosper its deliberations for the welfare of the people of the Moyne Shire. Amen. Right, any apologies? No apologies. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does anybody have a declaration of conflict of interest? If not, we'll move on. The confirmation of the minutes, please. The minutes have been circulated. Would anybody like to move that it is a fair and accurate record of the meeting held on Tuesday the 3rd of May? Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Anybody wish to speak against that? Councillor Foster?
No, I think it's a true and accurate record. Thank you.
Councillor Purcell?
No, Mayor, I think they're a true and accurate record of the meeting.
Thank you. I'll put it. Anybody wish to speak against that motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, for, against, carried 7-0. Thank you. Right, we'll move on now to public participation. Right, will I read what we'll just go straight into it? Straight into it. Right, thank you. Public participation, you have 5 minutes. I will give you a warning at 4 minutes, and after that we will have questions. We'll start by Ms. Diane Robertson, please. Welcome.
Come forward, Ms. Robertson.
Come forward. Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Thank you. You have 5 minutes and we'll give you a notification at 4. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Diane Robertson. I'm representing the Mortlake Garden Club. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous here. I don't know if you've read our letter. There's 2 letters that the Garden Club have put in. The main thing that the Garden Club are concerned about is the closing of the hub. Our Garden Club meet every Monday, once a month at 1:30. We use the room a lot, and we're not an ordinary, as for say, garden club. We do a lot of maintenance in the rose garden here. We water the roses in the summer, we deadhead them, and we maintain the name plaques and all the trees at our cost. We make stage themes throughout the Mortlake community. We donate trophies to rose shows. We also plant and donate trees for the local schools. We've designed atriums at Abbey and we've participated in all the Christmas parades that have been here, and we do window displays for community events. What we would like is an alternative room for us to hold our meetings with easy access, toilets, heating and cooling, table and chairs for a U-shaped formation, tables to allow to display our plants and competitions, and tea-making facilities, and a TV with DVD outlets, how we can have DVDs during the winter. And we have quite a few elderly people which we'd like easy access to. And I don't know if there's much more I can say.
Right, thank you, Ms. Robertson. Thank you. Any questions, please? Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms Robertson. It's actually really terrific to hear what your club does. I wasn't aware that you do so much, so thank you for the work you do in the community. Is there, if you were invited to meet in the library itself, would that be a suitable space if it had audio-visual equipment available for you there?
During COVID, we weren't allowed in the back room, and we did have one meeting inside the library in the window. Wasn't very successful because there was no seating for our group. There was high tables and chairs which our members can't climb up on, high stools. And we were aware that the library was open also, so there was people who had to keep our, meeting very quiet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions, please? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Congratulations on all the work you do. Prior to this space being available, where did you meet at that stage?
At St Coleman's Hall.
Yep.
And it was just impractical. It was too cold.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We don't always use it every month. We do trips away, excursions to nurseries and stuff like that. So it's not actually every month we use it. Christmas we don't use it. So it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Diane, as with everything, all the good things are done by volunteers. How many members have you got?
We've got 17 financial at the moment. That has dropped a lot during COVID. As I said, we've got a few elderly ones, and they've dropped out because of the, frightened of mixing with us. And
So the two key things are appropriate seating, obviously, and the AV or the DVDs, stuff like that. So, okay, so we need to be able to provide those facilities. Thank you.
well, it would be nice.
Yeah. No, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Look, how many people do you normally get at a meeting, Mrs Robertson?
Oh, well, at the moment, we had a meeting yesterday and we had 15 there. We actually done an excursion in Mortlake to a lady's house. But as you know, that's a lot of people in, to go to a house to have our meeting.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Dukas.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs Robinson, if the hub could provide you with all those things you needed, you'd be happy to go there?
Yes.
Okay, so it's up to us to provide all those things for you guys. Okay?
Yeah, and as I said, it's not every month, it's just,
No, that doesn't matter whether it's
Yeah.
every month or not.
Yeah.
And just looking at everything, if we provided this, that would make it easy for a lot of other people to meet there as well.
Yes.
As long as we can provide all the necessary requirements.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? If not, thank you very much, Mrs Robertson, for
Thank
your
you.
presentation.
Well done.
Right, we'll move on to the next presentation. Mr Kelvin Goodall. Welcome, Kelvin.
Such a sunny day.
Have 5 minutes and we'll give you a notification at 4. Thank you, Kelvin.
I've circulated a written copy of my presentation. Don't feel that I'm not going to deal with the whole lot of it. I'm not going to read the whole lot of it because I want to keep you awake at the end of the 5 minutes. I'm going to refer mainly to bits from the second page. I'll start that the first lot's a timeline and it details what we've done over the last number of years since it was first envisaged. MCD says canvass the community for their opinion, and there's considerable support within the Mortlake community for the multi-purpose room to be retained as a community facility. MCD has also sought its own legal advice, and while our preliminary advice is encouraging, MCD requests that information below be given to. On Monday the 26th of May 2022, the Director of Corporate Service emailed councillors regarding the response to the community's reaction to the library hub and changes to the community facility. Mr Ray advised councillors regarding the extent of the process and suggested for council responses. Mr Ray's email raises a number of serious concerns. As quoted in his advice, as discussed and agreed to at the workshop on 26th of April, the bigger picture here is the expanded library service for Mortlake and new positions that have been created. Locating the hub elsewhere would be inefficient and more costly to ratepayers. Question asked was legal advice sought by the council regarding this matter, and was the advice formally presented to council? When was the proposal to use the multi-purpose exclusively for the library brought to the council, and when did council formally decide to take over the multi-purpose room for the library hub? What alternative venues to the multi-purpose room were considered and by council and for new library hub, and on what basis were they rejected? What benefits to Mortlake did council identify having the library hub located in Mortlake, such as EFTs and if there was any preference for Mortlake residents? In making its assessment of the cost benefit of locating the library hub, did the council consider the human and social cost, or was it purely economic cost by locating the club elsewhere would be more inefficient and costly? Did council consider the impact of the loss of the multi-purpose room for community groups and activities, particularly after hours and on weekends? In the email, it's Mr Ray noted, in lieu of the lease, MCDC will be offered a licence to use the remainder of this facility after hours. NB, note, not community access. Access during library hours includes visitor information and Centrelink services. This means that not only is the community prevented from using...
4 minutes, Mr Goodall.
Not only is it means that the community can't access any part of the building. We'd like to know the reasoning to adopt this draconian restriction. There has been an impact of COVID, which means that we haven't been able to operate as we would choose for over 2 years. When and over what period did the council review the current bookings and utilisations room? Can the council identify the groups that are in the community? I'll step right on very quickly to consultation. MCDC is appalled by the way the consultation was handled by the Shire, and we will be writing to the Shire more fully. And on close, MCD has acted in good faith representing the community. However, the actions of the council and the administrations have damaged trust the community has in the council and has sullied its reputation as an honest broker. Mortlake has lost much during the last 2 years, with businesses closing, community...
Wind up, please, Mr Goodall.
It is proposed changes to the community centre comes as a blow to the people of Mortlake who believe the council was at their back.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions, please? Do we have any questions for Mr Goodall, please? Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things. How many members
Members of
your group?
at last count about 18.
And how often do you meet?
monthly, minimum of. There are 9 members on the committee itself.
So, from what I understand, you've been offered the use of the front part of the facility.
Well,
Why
according
is that
to-
inappropriate?
Sorry?
Why is the front half of the building inappropriate for your meetings?
Well, the community centre is not just used by MCDC, we're representing the community itself. And the community itself, there is a number of facets and a number of people that belong to that community and have community groups. It's not that MCDC is being removed up from After Hours, it can have its meetings there, but all members of the community that we represent will not be able to. That is the issue.
So just to follow up then, and I don't know who the committees are that you're referring to or you're representing, but are there other facilities in Mortlake that they could use to meet their needs?
There is no other facility in Mortlake, and that's why it was built as it was in the beginning, because there was no other facilities like that in Mortlake or even in the district. It was purpose-built as a community meeting and activities room. That's why it's got its own kitchenette, it's got a large screen for viewing slideshows, videos, whatever. It's got a storeroom, it's fully furnished with excess chairs, it's got movable tables. At one stage it even had what became a very smelly machine for cleaning paintbrush for when people had could wash their paintbrushes because there was art groups going there, and it didn't last very long, but it was a good intention.
So as a former councillor, where is the best place for this hub to go?
As a former councillor, well, I suppose I can't get. I regard that the movement of the community centre, the reduction in what it was able to do, the inability for us due to COVID and the uncertainty over the last 6 months or so to advertise the facility has meant that it has not been used because simply we weren't allowed to because of the state restrictions.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Lockett and then Councillor Purcell, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your presentation and thanks for all the work you do for the Mortlake community. Are there any specific requirements, if you were to use the front room that Councillor Gleeson spoke about, that you would require going forward if that was to happen, to use the space as you would like to be able to have your monthly meetings in?
Well, for our monthly meetings, I think we'd simply need a meeting space for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For ourselves, we would just need a meet because we meet at night.
Yep.
We do have members of the public visit on occasion. We could work with something to just chairs and tables and open space. But during the day, it would be impossible when people are coming in and out. It still would mean that for most community groups, for businesses, such as the recent presentation by Mount Fines in the room after we got rid of the furniture that was erroneously delivered, they used it because it had the facilities, including the big screen where they could give presentations to a group of people, and I don't know where and how in Mortlake you could put that facility. And I've been around a long time, but I've been in Mortlake for over 14 years, back from being a public servant, and that I can't think that was why the building was built, and it was part of the funding from Living Libraries that, you know, we only put 50 grand in, they put 500, but it was their funding, if I recall correctly, was for the building of a library with community spaces.
Right, thank you. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, former councillor. Just listening to you and reading your notes, you seem to be equally concerned about what's happened, but also about how it's happened. Is that fair?
I think the catalyst for today has what the future holds, what has happened, and the way it did happen, I think, is extremely unfortunate. I'm not here to barrel the council, but I think the decision, and I'm talking not on my behalf, I'm not talking on MCD's behalf, I think the losers out of this will be the community groups, and it will be especially difficult as we finally look like we might be starting to come out of COVID. Because let's face it, the last 2.5 years have been shite, and for everybody, and it's reflected in what we've been able to do and the amount of activity that's happening in Mortlake. It's just another reason that Mortlake is starting to slip back again.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Yeah, Councillor
Thank you.
Durkis.
G'day, Colin. How are things? Yeah, I know.
I'm getting there.
So, is there any way that we can make this work, the hub? Is there anything the Shire can do to satisfy your issues, the garden club, etc., so it actually works? They can have the hub, and you can have your meeting place, you can have your screens. Is there any way that can happen, or is it just too small a space to have everything in it?
I think the space is ideal. The space because it's not a big hall. Most of the other places in Mortlake, you either got a church hall that's old and drafty and with dodgy electricity, possibly, or you've got small shop you could probably set something up in, but that'd be too small. The big thing that people I think are concerned of was that the effort. We worked from number of years between the Library Corporation, the Shire and ourselves, and it was a great cooperative effort to get the funding and then to build it and have it designed. And the way it was designed was to have a dedicated space for community use for such things as meetings, but as for other presentations, craft work, a whole range. So that's why it was called the multi-purpose room.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions, Mr Goodall? Thanks a lot for your presentation.
No worries. I'm sorry I was a bit slow getting away, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll call on now Mr Jim Walsh to speak, owner of 194 Griffith Street, Port Fairy. Mr Walsh, welcome. You have 5 minutes. We'll give you notification at 4. Thank you.
I circulated an email to all the councillors. Did you all read that? Get that? That's good. Well, it's pretty much the crux of my presentation, really, but I would like to point out that that house that we've proposed to build was given a planning permit back in 2016, and we inadvertently let it run out due to other family circumstances and financial circumstances. It's back then the CMA actually didn't object to the permit, and it was duly granted. The footprint of this house we've got now is outside the floodplain overlay, and the main issue with the Catchment Authority is, well, I've spoke directly to the officer there, Peter Roberts, I think his name was the access in and out in case of a flood. Now, I don't know, we experienced that flood down there a couple of years ago, and you know the level of the water raised, came up quite slowly, so it would have given you ample time to get out and ample warning. there's also our land at 194 has also got legal access to the carriageway easement along the side of it, which was created in the common property of the original subdivision. And also there's legal access for us out to Beach Street. So we have actually got legal access out through the other properties in the case of an emergency. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say really today.
Thank you, Mr Walsh. Any questions, please? Yeah, Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you. Jim, just a point of clarification. So you're aware that you're in a flood inundation overlay. So the footprint of the house, is that affected anyway?
No, it's not in the. Actually not in the overlay, Damien. It's that's acknowledged by the CMA. My discussions with the officer up there was, their main concern is ingress and egress in the case of a emergency flood. And I did point out to him that we had actually legal access out to Beach Street via the easements and so forth. But, I didn't hear back from them after that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for coming to Mortlake today to present. How many properties or proposed properties, both, use the driveway?
Well, that's another issue. I think it's about 11. All up, 10 or 11. That goes with the. I think there's 4 units at Mungala, I think, and then there's 4 the other side. And I think our neighbour Craig, he uses it as well. Yeah.
And through you,
Yes.
if the property was to be built, I imagine that would be the first property there, the closest one to the road, correct?
No, but we've already built one.
Yep.
The front's onto Griffith Street, and this one's behind it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it would be the second.
The second, yeah, they're on separate titles, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it would be this second property out of 11 that use that driveway.
Yeah.
Thank
Probably,
you.
yeah.
Right, any further questions? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Walsh. Your emergency exit would be to Beach Street, would go through, is it Hanby Court, that one up the top there? So you would go through that, would you?
No, we'd go straight up through, pretty much onto, well, Beach Street's not even made.
Oh,
At the front there.
you're talking
Yeah.
about Beach Street that
Yeah.
would be there.
Yeah, it's actually there, but it's
Right,
not
I get
physically
you.
made
Yep,
in
yep,
front
yep.
of Mungala.
No, I was just trying to work out how
1990,
you would get into Beach Street.
Yeah, well,
access.
actually, it's there, but you could access the beach and walk along
Yeah.
the ridge there, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions to Mr Walsh, please? Yes, Councillor Dukas.
Okay, thank you. Mr Walsh, you said there's a unit already built closer to Griffith Street?
Yes. That
But now,
was
after
part
the-
of our application in 2015.
Right, so that's built, and that's closer to the road,
That's correct.
that they've got issues with.
No, they never had issues with that.
No, but they do now.
Oh, well, it's already built, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, it was all right back then in what you could say is a worse position when it comes to flooding.
Yes.
Yet now the CMA are jumping up and down and making a song and dance over the second unit that isn't in the flood overlay.
That's correct. It's all about the access and,
Yeah,
the-
thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions to Mr Walsh? Well, thank you, Mr Walsh. We'll be moving that forward and we'll be discussing that fairly soon. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to Steve Myers and Dee Smith regarding the proposed dwelling in 196 Griffith Street, Port Fairy. Welcome, Steve and Dee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. It follows on nicely just with Mr Walsh's presentation. We're speaking in support of a planning application for a dwelling at 196 Griffith Street. We've been assisting the landowner with a planning application for their new home, and I've got Dee Smith here with me today. Dee and her partner are looking to build a modest 4-bedroom home split-level home on the property, and the dwelling's been designed to comply with the Port Fairy design guidelines and the flood overlay controls that apply to the land. We just note importantly the dwelling has been designed to not increase flood hazards, and it's been designed to ensure that habitable rooms are well above the nominated flood level for the site. The CMA has no concerns regarding the design of the building, nor do they have any concerns about the free passage of floodwaters. So there's no issues in relation to the dwelling itself being flooded. The CMA has recommended that the permit application be refused because of the flood hazard associated with access from Griffith Street, which Mr Walsh has just alluded to. I guess we just wanted to note that that flood hazard isn't unique to 196 Griffith Street. If it was, we might not have been sitting here, we might not have made the application. This isn't a unique situation just to 196, and I guess we've looked at it in terms of this is an issue that affects all properties within the East Beach area, and a rough count, so don't quote me on the 200, it's 200, can I say ish, houses within that area that are affected by that same hazard issue. And the hazard issue arises at two locations on Griffith Street. It's at near the Port Fairy Gardens, there's a low point, and there's another low point at the other end of Griffith Street or Skeens Road, just outside the golf course. I've sent some information over the weekend, hopefully that made some sense. I've shown those two locations. The water, once in a large flood event, the depths of water at that point effectively cut Griffith Street off. So I don't want to say it's an island, but it becomes an island, yeah. What we wanted to look at then is in terms of how quickly that flood event happens. And we're lucky, we've got the too long gauge. The too long gauge is an indicator in terms of when these large flood events are likely to head towards Port Fairy. And the SES website nominates that takes about 6 to 8 hours before it hits Port Fairy, along with bomb weather warnings and flood watch warnings, as giving ample time, which again, Mr Walsh has alluded to that flood event, which wasn't a large flood event, but that flood event in the last 2 years, which did show water levels slowly increasing. It wasn't a rapid wake up in the middle of the night and find your street flooded. So the point we want to make is the flood hazard that the CMA relies on in their recommendations for this application is just no different to any other property in the East Beach area. And I guess we wanted to highlight that we're concerned that the CMA appears to be inconsistent in their advice and approach in relation to new dwellings and subdivision within the East Beach area, where in some cases they recommend approval or are silent, and in other cases where they recommend refusal. We don't rely on previous decisions to support the proposal, but I think it's just fair to raise almost a bit of an unfairness or some of this inconsistency. We're aware, because we helped the Frasers with an application at 190 Griffith Street for a new dwelling, which is 2 doors down. CMA didn't offer any objection, permit was issued in February. So we've just got this inconsistency in relation to how the CMA is managing and providing advice in relation to this flood risk hazard. Some dwellings get permits and others don't, and it just doesn't make any sense. I guess what we ask here is that council consider whether the risk here in 196 and Mr Welsh's 194 is acceptable. We say that it is, and in the context of ample flood warning time and that the construction of the dwelling will not increase the burden on emergency services, an additional dwelling on land that's zoned for residential purposes
4 minutes, Steve.
is entirely appropriate. We ask that council set aside the recommendation and issue a permit for the proposal. Sorry, Dick.
In my last minute, my husband and I bought this property at 196 Griffith Street 20 years ago. This month, 20 years ago. And with the full intention of building a family home there. My sister had bought around about the same time. And look, because of the time, 911 had just happened, and my husband specialised in counter-terrorism, and we ended up overseas. And life throws curveballs, and we're overseas for 20 years, and things change. So we're back in Australia, and 3 years ago the CMA told us, and really we didn't ever lose touch with Port Fairy, I've got to say, our little block. We'd visit all the time, and also it was really it was just really something that we felt lucky to have it in the world we were in. And to come back and be told it's too dangerous to live on because this event, we may drown from this event. It's just a very difficult decision to now understand. especially given that our neighbour has just built a house right up close, right next to us on Griffith Street, and our other neighbours have just renovated their home and doubled the size. It just, the fairness and the consistency and just, you know...
We're over time, if you could finish.
Okay, I just want to wrap it up by saying, I know over 20 years you could have driven backward and forward and thought it was just someone else's investment, but we're just an ordinary family who've paid a mortgage on that place for 20 years, and now we've found ourselves over the last 3 years, the CMA's refused to meet us, blatantly refused to meet us early on 3 years ago, so we've been living this for 3 years now, and it's just really a financial and emotional burden. So I just ask you to make a fair decision and a consistent decision based on all the evidence.
Right, thank you for your presentation. Any questions, please? Yeah, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your presentation and
That's
thanks
okay.
for sharing your raw emotions.
Sorry about that.
No,
It's
never
just been a long
apologise
3
for your
years.
emotions. Yeah, no, we can understand it obviously means a lot to you and we appreciate you sharing that with us. This question's probably more to Steve. Obviously we've seen with climate change, you know, significant events occurring with weather. If we had a horrendous, let's say 1 in 100 year flood, what would happen to the bottom level?
Sure.
I mean, hypothetical, just
Yeah.
in your kind of professional opinion.
We've quite
Because
enjoyed,
obviously that would happen to everywhere along
It
there.
would.
You've designed the building.
Yeah. we've quite enjoyed working with Dee and Hunter. And Dee was on the 2040 community sessions. And it was kind of a catalyst for us to have a conversation in relation to exactly that, the climate emergency, which Council's declared, and also its planning for how to future-proof development. We, with the architects, came up with that idea that in terms of the house, I don't want to say it will float, it will appear to float. It's built at a level where everything habitable is well above the flood level, and everything below the flood level, like a garage and etc., is designed to float. And done in a way that doesn't then put a burden on insurance, in that it's designed to weather a flood. So it's kind of, if you like, a design which people could point to and look to in the future, as that's how you can build adaptable houses in floodplains to adapt to those kind of flood events.
And if I can just add, we've tried very hard from the very beginning, hiring a local architect to do all the right things to address all of these issues, because you can either just stop development or you can adapt to climate change, and we've tried to really come forward with a very modest, reasonable home that adapts to climate change and adapts to flooding, so that those issues are taken into account.
Thank you.
It hasn't just been a cookie cutter home that's...
Thank you. Any further questions, please, councillors? Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, Mayor. My question's to Mr Myers, if that's all right. The issue, I think the important issue is you say it's going to take 6 or 8 hours before the flood gets from a few kilometres up the road. And where you are, if it does flood, you walk up the sand dune. There's not a hell of a lot of danger in that, I don't see. My question is, do you have any idea why the CMA changed their mind, or whether there's different people working on it, whether they've got different data, or what, or why they have changed so quickly, so recently?
It's a very good question, and I'm going to have to answer it with a I don't know.
Right.
But what I do know...
That's right, I thought you'd answer.
No, but what I do know is that they're working from the same data.
Yeah.
They're working from the same information. We've had other situations where within, I'll say weeks, I might be exaggerating, but let's say months, we've had advice from them which has suggested that they wouldn't object to a development to then change their mind, particularly in relation to this discussion. Nothing changed. The policy was the same. The data that they were applying was the same. It's no new flood study. It's a changing in opinion. Yep. Look, and Councillor Purcell, we get that from time to time in a planning world. Things do change, and maybe it might be personnel, but there's no evidence in front of us which would suggest that the hazard today is higher than it would have been 12 months ago, 2 years ago, or when the flood study was prepared a decade ago.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor, any further questions? I just have a quick question. Moyne Shire has declared a climate emergency, and in the last 4 or 5 months, seeing the horrific footage of flooding and that, even though well away from here, associated with climate change, do you think this may be causing the CMA to be erring on the side of caution?
Good question, but I think you might have to ask the CMA. I don't want to be speculating, sorry.
And if I can just say, if the CMA are taking that into account, then that's just not a fair decision, because it should be based on the community that we exist in and we're building in. And look, so many communities around Australia and island continent are facing these same sort of issues, and I feel that it needs to be actually tailored to what's going on in Port Fairy and the wider community if we want to grow and prosper as a community, and not just use things like we've seen in the news to make decisions that actually shouldn't be part of that decision-making process.
Thank you.
I just think it's very unfair.
Any further questions? If not, thank you, Dee and Steve, for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's greatly appreciated.
Right, thank you. Now, welcome Mr. Paul Sheehan. Wally, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and pardon me, and councillors for giving me the chance to speak to you today. As you know, my name's Paul Sheehan. I'm going to talk about Avery's Paddock, a cricket ground in Port Fairy, and College Oval, a cricket and soccer ground. The Folk Festival has been very good for the Port Fairy and district community for over 40 years. Even my club, the Cricket Club, has had 4 interest-free loans which have been paid back in full. But at what cost? My understanding is the Moyne Shire paid the rental fee for the Folk Festival for the last 3 festivals to Southcombe Park Committee of Management. So what does that make the Folk Festival? They're not a user group, supposedly not a hirer. They're definitely not a repairer of damage. So what are they? An itinerant trader who rape and pillage the ovals. Enough is enough.
Point of order, Mayor, that language is not appropriate in the context of what we're talking about. I'd like you to change that if you could, please.
Oh, yeah.
No, I agree with it. That's exactly what it is.
Sorry, look, let Mr. Sheehan continue, please.
Enough is enough. I know the Moyne Shire make a lot of money out of the caravan parks during the Folk Festival, with the parks booked out. But during COVID in 2021, no festival in the caravan parks were pretty full during the Labor Day weekend. Avery's Paddock was built by the Cricket Club in 1995, turning a wasteland into a magnificent oval and best turf wicket in country Victoria. The Folk Festival chairman of the time, the late Councillor Russell Clark, said the Folk Festival would never use Avery's Paddock for the festival. The Folk Festival continually walk away from what I and many others regard as their responsibility to pay for the repair of the ovals by contractors. Continually over the years, the Cricket Club volunteers put in countless hours to level dirt in holes, lay turf on bare patches, spread seed and water after the Folk Festival. Even this year, a conversation between myself and Jack Smits, the head of construction for the Folk Festival and president of the Port Fairy Bowls Club, I said to Jack, would you let the Folk Festival on your bowling green? And the answer was obviously no. And I said, this oval is our bowling green. Jack walked away. There was no response. As volunteers, we seem to be getting no support or respect, and it really does get to you. It's been over 12 weeks since the Folk Festival has finished. And even though there has been a bit of work done on the ovals, I've said all along that it is very unlikely that cricket will be played on Avery's paddock this year. And if you don't believe that, you need to walk on the ovals and see how bad the damage is. And in the solution, shift the Folk Festival. Or at the very least, get them to put up a $100,000 bond each year, which I think is too little to ask.
4 minutes.
They then may show a little respect for the ovals, for at the moment there is none. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Sheehan, for your presentation. Questions, please. Councillor Lockett, and then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks Paul for your presentation. I again feel your raw emotion, and thank you for all the work you do looking after those ovals, because you do really look after those ovals.
But it means nothing.
Well, it does to a lot of people. I know that, and the cricket club and the soccer club and many others really do appreciate that. Do you think if the repair works post particularly this Foki, given the heavy rain on the Monday and the massive damage that was occurred, if the repair works was done a lot earlier, that would give you more chance of being able to play cricket this season? The ground would have more chance to repair.
Well, there probably would have been, yes, yeah. But I don't think you understand how much work needs to be done. I spoke to one of the contractors and he believed that there needs to be 300 tonne of sand brought in on both ovals to level some of the indentations in them. So that's a job that just can't happen overnight. You know? It's just the way it is. The work that's been done has been very good, but it wouldn't touch 20% of the ovals. It really wouldn't. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr Sheehan. Even I, who have never played a game of cricket in my life, have heard lots of stories about the work that you personally do and the club does. So, sincere thanks for that. Just to be clear, your ask of us today, what exactly would you like us to do? Because I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Well, the best solution is for the Folk Festival to move from the South Camp Park Reserve.
So that would be the ideal outcome.
That would be the ideal outcome. Because last year, when there was no Folk Festival, the WDCA, Walmart District Cricket Association Grand Finals were played on Avery's Paddock. Yeah. It's the best wicket around.
Right, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Gleeson.
Well, how many hours do you reckon you guys put in over a 12-month period to maintain that facility?
About 800 volunteer hours, yeah.
Just things like the cost of the fuel and the mower and all that. Who pays all that?
The cricket club.
So for 12 months of the
repairs
year,
on the mower.
so for 12 months of the year, you get to maintain the facility to use it 4.5 months of the year, and then potentially not get to use it at all.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mr Sheehan, for your presentation. What efforts have been made to have a conversation between yourselves and the Port Fairy Folk Festival Committee directly and the chairs, etc., about ways that this can be avoided, or even the big question about going elsewhere?
Well, over the years, I think council put in place, there was I believe, someone, when they were in the construction stage, to control things, where they drove and everything. When it comes to deconstruction, it's just open slather. And therein lies the problem. I know we had, I wasn't here, we had rain on the Monday. Deconstruction should have stopped for 36 hours. And I know the Folk Festival say, well, that costs us a lot of money. I don't care. You know, they don't put any money up now. Adam Bell, the turf consultant that works with council, he said if everything stopped for 24 hours, none of this, or very little of this damage would have occurred. They are a party unto themselves, and they take notice of no one. And I'm not saying that I've been dealing with them for 25 years down there. I know what they're like.
Right, look, we're getting over time now. Councillor Gleeson, then Councillor Dukas. You can keep it short, please.
Just one thing then, in light of Councillor Lockett's comments, why didn't the work start immediately? Like, I remember a few years ago that I think Adam Bell was the preferred contractor who was to come in the week after Folk Festival. So if that was put in place several years ago, why didn't that happen?
Well, Adam was in charge, but I don't know.
Right, Councillor Dukas.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, what could be done before they erect all the tents? Anything? Pre-construction of the Folk Festival facilities to take pressure off something like a rain event?
Well, you try and have the ales as green as possible without being as in too green, as in too soft. Before, you know, it's
That's right.
You know, yeah, it's a lot, you know, it's a...
So, follow up. So would an oversight committee be preferable to what's going on now? Say a committee with councillors and cricket club, etc., to oversee exactly what gets done and to be able to have the power to make the decision. If it's raining, no, you stop work till it dries out. Because, like you say, it's open slather now, but if there was a committee that could ultimately control things, would that be a better way to go?
I think it would be, but, as I've said, they take notice of no one.
Sorry.
And anyone that's had dealings with them will agree. I'm sorry.
We have another question very quickly, Councillor Purcell, if you could keep it short, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I certainly will. Thank you, Mr. Sheen. The reason I believe that it wasn't repaired, and that is the big issue, because I walk on there more than any, not as often as you, but you know, very regularly. We've got 3 months down the track, all the heat's gone out of the ground, there's no growth going to happen for ages. My understanding is that the turf consultant turned up the week after and then had work to do in Ballarat or somewhere else and decided to go away and leave it. And it's still like it now. And some of those divots. My question is, and not only that, I've got a list of the issues that were raised by to the Folk Festival. You know, like there was a rubbish bin left upside down, there's a bit of gaffer tape left, you know. Not one mention of the oval. And it is the issue. But there are 15 things there and not one mentioned the oval. So I guess that was a statement rather than a question, that there is a fall down somewhere between the message getting across from one party to the other.
And the problem is, Councillor Purcell, the cricket club are the losers out of this every time. And now the soccer club as well.
Yep.
Because they use College Oval.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Sheehan, for your presentation. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Mead.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion to suspend standing orders and move forwards item 4, 10, 11 and 12, please.
Right, it's been moved by Councillor Mead that we move, seconded by Councillor Lockett. All those in favour, 4, against, carried 7-0. Thank you. Right, we'll bring item forward, please. Community and Corporate Services Director, Mr. Ray.
Mayor, thanks very much. The recommendation for you, I won't read it, but it's effectively to terminate an existing lease between the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation, the Mortlake Community Development Committee and Corangamite Shire Council. The reason being is that the Corangamite Regional Library Corp is moving to dissolve. The terms of the lease allows council to terminate the lease when one of those parties choose to dissolve or wind up. That notice of intent was received this last Sunday. It's also the proposed location for the establishment of the shared service library hub, and that follows extensive work undertaken between the shires of Corangamite and Moyne. And the purpose in that regard is to align it to the current library location. Other venues were explored, both within Moyne Shire and Corangamite. However, from a practicality perspective and in terms of value for ratepayers, that the hub at the rear of the library is the preferred location. So the recommendation is in that regard. The background material was presented at a workshop recently, and similarly, Council have also received 3 previous council reports in relation to the shared service library, and in terms of the hub establishment, Council were foreshadowed of this report during previous workshops. So the recommendations before you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. We have the officer recommendation before us. Would somebody like to move that, please? Been moved by Councillor Lockett, seconded. Oh, sorry.
Question, clarification, if possible.
Yes.
Questions to Mr. Ray. We've heard today from a couple of presenters, Mrs. Robertson and Mr. Goodall, about items that they would require to be able to hold effective meetings in the place, you know, some basically chattels. That seems like an easy resolution. Is that something that council could be able to purchase or you know?
Mr. Ray?
Mayor, thank you, through you. There are items in terms of visual aids currently located in the meeting room. They can be relocated at very little expense into the library for use by both community groups during opening hours and also the MCDC committee as well.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
I had a question also,
Yeah.
if I can, Mayor. Mr. Ray, after hours access is another issue that has been raised. Is it possible for community groups to have after hours access to the library?
My advice at the moment, it's not practical to do so. It's not to say that it can't be explored as part of the future licence agreement that is sought to be offered to the MCDC. What we probably need is some investment in terms of ability to do that. What is not being taken away is MCDC's use of the facility, both for their purposes to conduct their own meetings, but also importantly the retention of current services being the Centrelink services and visitor information services. In fact, with the establishment of the library hub, it'll probably become a far more vibrant facility with more activity on that location. As I said, other locations were explored. It's from a pure economic perspective, wasn't cost effective to invest in those facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Yeah, Councillor Purcell?
Another question, if I may.
Yes.
The officer's recommendation, I'm just not sure, should it be asking us to ratify the actions that have already been taken? Because, you know, terminate the current lease, and I think it's already been terminated, advise the 2 tenants of the decision to terminate, you know, shouldn't we be just ratifying what's already happened rather than, because this looks like it hasn't already happened.
So, Mayor, through you, so the decision to terminate is council's alone. So the notice probably should have been a foreshadowing of the termination to come. The substantive motion or recommendation of the council is to make that determination today.
Thank you. Councillor Dukas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The term library hub, Mr. Ray, my understanding is there's going to be 3 people employed in that hub.
Mayor, through you, that's correct, Mr. Dukas.
And
Councillor.
these 3 full-time people or a couple of part-timers?
So my understanding is a full-time hub coordinator.
Right.
And in terms of the tenure of the other 2 officers, I would have to take that on notice.
Right, so 3 people in the building somewhere. How will that affect, you said that you can still have meetings, how will that affect those meeting spaces? And are those people also librarians? So you've got a coordinator, manager type position. So the other two, are they library staff? Do they lend out books, etc.?
Mayor, through you, yes, they would be qualified librarians and so forth to be able to serve members of the public in regards to their needs at the library.
Right. So the main management position actually doesn't have to be there, does it? It could be anywhere. Because they're sitting at a desk doing library stuff. They're not handing out books and filling out cards, etc.
Mayor, through you, the arrangement is that Moreton Shire Council would provide the hub management role. That management positions needs to be accommodated with where the hub is located. And I guess the question is whether or not the hub is located at that facility or elsewhere. Contingent upon the management of the hub are a range of other functions and services to service the needs of both Moreton Shire Council and Corangamite Shire Council.
Thank you. Right, so under financial implications, you're talking about 250 to 500,000 to run that hub, or to run it somewhere else. That would be the cost. Is that correct?
Mayor, through you, there would be start-up or capital costs associated with establishing a hub. This is my estimate only, or officers' estimates in terms of what that may entail. Plus, there would be ongoing recurrent costs. Now, these are costs that are over and above the existing costs currently budgeted for the provision of library services.
So could you expand on that? I'm thinking as CEO, I'll use the term, and a couple of others sitting at a desk. What do they need? Computers, typewriters? Well, I'll have them. Computers and printers, typewriters. Let's see, you can tell how old I am. That sort of, it seems an awful high figure. I mean, surely there's a library in Koroit, beautiful old library. They could move in that tomorrow.
Mayor, through you, the purpose of the hub is to be the repository for book stock.
But that would still be there. That's there now.
It is there now, but what it does require is for the management of the shared service. So, as you'd appreciate, Corangamite Regional Library Corporation provided that service, that central head office function. This is largely a head office function that will be supporting the libraries branches of Corangamite and Moreton Shire Council.
But it could be done anywhere. The main position, the CEO position, could be anywhere. Anywhere in the Shire, because they don't need to be in the library.
The practicality of it, separating the staff from the location of the hub assets, is impractical and inefficient from an operating perspective. The hub assets would need to be located somewhere, though the location of a hub has previously been explored with officers from Corangamite and Moyne, and there was a location, alternate location in Mortlake that was considered. However, you know, there are costs associated with starting up that. There are inefficiencies in terms of having staff off-site at an alternate location, and there will be an ongoing higher recurrent cost to council in doing so.
Right, thank you. Any further questions, please? Right, thank you, Mr. Ray. Well, I'll seek a mover of the officer's recommendations, please. Being moved by Councillor Foster. Seconder, please. Councillor Gleeson. Right, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Mr. Ray has outlined the hub operations, and as I understand it, it needs to have somewhere where trucks can come and delivery vans can come and go and access it easily. I hear Mr. Goodall loudly and clearly, and also understand that it does mean that some of the groups may have to move into an alternative space, but I don't think we're suggesting that we're going to kick them out and there'll be no space. Certainly, we've talked here about maybe even using this very room, perhaps, for after-hours community groups, but that's something to be a separate issue, I guess. I think the cost to our ratepayers of establishing an alternative venue is, as we've heard, in the order of $250,000 to $500,000, and that's going to likely result in a less efficient operation. So we're bringing 3 new jobs to Mortlake. a lot more activity, and we're not excluding any community groups. There's still a large space there, a couple of small meeting rooms in the library, and perhaps there are things that we could do to make it much more user-friendly in terms of the correct kind of seating, some private areas. I see that as not insurmountable at all. So I think libraries are a crucial service to our entire community, and you know, this was not of our doing. Warrnambool City and Colac Otway Shire withdrew from the Corangamite Library Corporation and set a whole chain of events in motion. And I'm happy to support this. I note the concerns of the community, but don't think that they're mutually exclusive things.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Times change, and they do. And just to reinforce Councillor Foster, two councils withdrew from the library services, and Corangamite and the Moyne Shire are investing nearly $1 million a year to ensure that we have library services, and it's a hell of an expense. Very, very conscious of the community groups, and I'm sure that through our service we can provide the DVDs the appropriate seating to address some of those concerns. I don't think it's council's responsibility to provide a meeting room for every individual group, and so we have to share facilities. In Mortlake we have the DC Farron Oval that I've met in, the bowling club which I've met in, this facility here. It's about using the assets that we have in an appropriate manner, and by Kelvin's own words, that it was built by the Library Corporation with a contribution from the community. And so all we're asking to do is to seek to continue to have library facilities within the community and within the Shire, and in partnership with Corangamite, it makes sense that as the host we have it as close to both in the Shires, and Mortlake's the logical venue for that. So as long as we can continue to support the community groups, I'm very, very happy to endorse the Library Hub.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion, please? Yeah, Councillor Dukas.
Yeah. Oh, well, somebody's got to stick with the people. Okay. Now, we've told about start-up costs. Well, there'd be some associated with the hub, maybe not as much as going somewhere else. Recurrent costs, well, they'll be wherever we go. That doesn't make any difference at all. We're very light on figures for those costs. We were told that there are 3 new jobs, so what happened to the old staff? Or I shouldn't say old, because they're probably young, but to the previous staff, are they the part of the 3 new jobs or not?
Yeah, through you. So these are effectively employing previous staff that would have been employed by the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation to run their head office function. So the branch staff remain, and there are new positions created to run the shared service model. A point of clarification, if I may, Mayor. So the budget to operate the shared service library is in accordance with our previous levels of contributions made to the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation. If we're choosing to relocate the hub elsewhere, that'll be at a higher cost to council.
So, Mr. Mayor, the old staff are keeping their jobs, librarians. You've got 3 new staff. You're saying it's going to be a lot cheaper to be there because of start-up and recurrent. Those 3 new jobs can go anywhere. They're not hanging in our books. They're office staff. You put them anywhere. You put a transportable out the back and put them in there. So some of this doesn't mesh. And the fact that the community wasn't taken along on the journey while we're going through these library re-amalgamation of Warrnambool, not Warrnambool, but Moyne Shire and Corangamite, I think is pretty disappointing. And people still aren't sure what this hub consists of. And people are talking about, you've got this hall, that hall, another hall. Well, maybe they're not always available. Some meet during the day, some meet at evening. And it's their facility. And even if it does end up being the Shire hub, I think that we should have some sort of a meeting to explain to the local community, not only those groups that will use it, but the community in general, on exactly what's proposed, so everybody's clear. I'm pretty disappointed that that hasn't been done beforehand. Because you can tell now by the people that are here, that not everybody knows exactly what's going on. So in that respect, I'll vote against it until the community's brought along in the journey or given a lot more information.
Thank you, Councillor Dukas. Any other councillor wish to speak against the motion, please? If not, I'll refer back to the mover of the motion, please. Oh, sorry.
Speak for the motion.
Sorry. I'd like to speak for the motion, sorry, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Agree with Councillor Foster and Councillor Gleeson's comments thus far. I think it's a high priority that we are able to look at the night access. That was a real concern of both the presentations today and also the items that Councillor Gleeson highlighted, and Mrs Robertson and Mr Goodall. I feel that once those issues are resolved, this will be a good outcome for the community. I agree with Councillor Dukas. The process was far from ideal and may require some follow-up and some further investigation, but we need to move forward and sort this out so the community can get on with having their meetings in an ideal space that will suit them. And there's been some miscommunication and information out there in the community, and we need to clear that up and sort it out. And I think this motion will help do that.
Thank you, Councillor Lockett. Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak for the motion, please? If not, I'll call on the mover to summarise, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's all been stated, but just in relation to the recurrent costs, I think what we're looking at here is the difference between running one building and running two buildings, which would be the alternative. So there are certainly recurrent costs that would come into play. I don't think, I heard Mr Goodall talk about the human and social cost. I think if we can resolve the issue of finding an appropriate space that meets all of the requirements and enables all of the groups to continue with all of their activities, then that cost isn't there anymore. So, and the benefits to Mortlake and indeed to the entire Shire through having the library hub are incredibly important. So I really urge my colleagues to consider supporting this.
Right, thank you, Councillor Foster. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour for? Against? Carried 6-1. Thank you.
No surprises there.
For was Councillor Purcell, Lockett, Foster, Mead, Smith, Gleeson, and Councillor Dukas against. Thank you. Right, as per Councillor Mead's motion, we will now move on to bringing motion 10 and 11 and 12 forward. So start with item number 10, planning permit 194 Griffith Street, Port Fairy. The Acting Director of Economic Development and Planning, please.
I'll defer to Ms Olsen.
Oh, thank you, Mr Lee.
Planning, Building and Health.
Thank you, Ms Olsen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So before you today is a planning permit for buildings and works to construct a dwelling at 194 Griffith Street in Port Fairy. The proposed dwelling is for a double-storey dwelling. The application is for a dwelling on the rear lot of a previous two-lot subdivision that occurred sometime after 2017. So the application before you has been referred out to the relevant authorities as well as neighbouring property holders. We received one objection, however that objection was withdrawn after further information was received. We did receive a response from the Catchment Management Authority, the Glenelg Hopkins Catchment Management Authority, and it requested that the the planning permit was not issued for the reason of access to the property. So the access to the property during a flood event would be blocked by water. In taking on board all of the relevant information, the dwelling itself, it has all of the required information with it, and would be approved. However, the Catchment Management Authority recommendation means that council officers or the planning officers have recommended refusal in this case.
Thank you, Ms Olsen. Any questions, please? Any questions, please, before we seek a move of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Gleeson.
Just for a learning experience, so it was referred to the Catchment Management Authority because of?
So the planners are required to send it to the Catchment Management Authority as part of the rules under the Planning and Environment Act.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms Olsen, we've heard from a presentation earlier that mentioned this application, similar to this application, was put forward back in 2015 and there was no objections then from the CMA. Do we know, as CMA can give reasons why now they've objected when it's come forward, when they didn't 6 years ago?
So, through you, Mayor, I have looked at the previous response from the CMA on this one. They have suggested that it is of medium to high hazard category back then. However, I believe there was some changes made to the original proposal. The original proposal was for three lots and on the lot, and so they felt that it was the reduction of one dwelling meant that the density wasn't as impacted, so it met their intentions.
Right, thank you. Any further questions to Ms Olsen before we... Yeah, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Can you just explain to us how the CMA reference is only a recommendation rather than a have to be?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, there are two types of authorities within the Planning Act. There are recommending authorities and determining authorities. If a determining authority suggests that the permit should be refused, then council has no option but to refuse the permit. However, the Catchment Management Authority are a recommending authority, so they provide their recommendations, and we have the option to go with their decision or against it.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions or discussion before we seek a mover of the motion? If not, I'll seek a mover of the motion of the officer's recommendation, please. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Mead. Sorry.
Mayor, I'd like to move the alternate motion.
Right.
Which is, sorry, it's not an alternate motion. Move the motion to grant a permit.
Right, thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Mead that we move a motion to grant a permit. Seconded by Councillor Foster. Right, Councillor Mead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So, councillors, yeah, as you know, we've had several presentations on this one at workshop and during the call-in process, etc. And further to that, today we've heard from in emails from the applicant, and also a presentation, and also some questions to the manager of planning today. So, it's my view on this one that, given that it was put forward some years ago and there was no objections then, and my view that the applicant has gone to lengths to mitigate some of the risks with potential flooding in that area, and the fact that there's no doubt we have issues with housing shortages, which we all know as a council, and we've advocated on that behalf. I'm happy to move the motion to grant a permit on this occasion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. Councillor Foster, a seconder, please.
Thanks, Mayor. I
sympathise with our planning team on this. They've done their jobs, and I don't like to go against their advice. But on this occasion, I just feel like common sense has to prevail here. If there was a flood event of the magnitude that the CMA has warned about, I think the entire street would be underwater. So the access becomes a moot point. So I think we just need to be a little bit sensible sometimes, even though planning is such a vexed topic for some of us. But, you know, I just can't see where this would possibly be seen to be common sense. So I'm very happy to support the alternative motion to grant a permit.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Do we have anybody wishing to speak against the motion, please? Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Right, anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Yeah, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Not wanting to compare the two designs, but having heard from presenters on a very similar design, I'll note that the habitable areas, if you were to be asleep upstairs and a huge flood occurred, you would be upstairs. So if the ground floor was to flood, the worst possible outcome would be wet feet. So I think, again, we can see that the designs are being adapted to allow for climate change and, horrific event of significant flooding. But happy to support the alternative motion to grant.
Thank you, Councillor Lockett. I'll be speaking in favour of the motion. My main concern was access in a major flood, but I think it's been pointed out in the past that these are slow-moving events, and as Mr Myers said, there's the Toolong, you can tell what's happening well up river upstream before it gets to into the lock. So, and also there is the rear access out through onto the beach or Beach Street, so I will be supporting the motion. Anybody wish to speak for the motion? If not, I'll hand it back to the mover, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. And just to reiterate, I think our planning team does a magnificent job, and Miss Olsen in particular at the top there, so it's nothing against the work they've done. We understand they're following the guidelines and the suggestions been placed by referral authorities, but on this occasion I think it's a positive move that we grant a permit. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. I will now put item number 10 to the vote. Those in favour of, for, against, carried 7-0. Thank you. Right, we'll move on now to item 11, please. Planning permit for 196 Griffith Street. Again, I'll call on the Director of Economic Development and Planning, probably.
Thanks, Mayor. Through Mayor, I'll again hand over to Ms Olsen.
The manager, Ms Olsen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As you point out, this is a planning permit application for 196 Griffith Street in Port Fairy. The application is for buildings and works to construct a dwelling. The application is for a single storey dwelling, and it's set back 15 metres from Griffith Street. So the applicants have responded to issues raised by the CMA, so it is less affected by the flooding on the actual lot. However, it also attracted the same response from the CMA with regard to access to the site. This application also received an objection, however that was also withdrawn after further information was supplied. Sorry, I'm jumping around. However, the CMA submission has been what the officer has made the recommendation on today. So the refusal of that application.
Thank you, Ms Olsen. Any questions, please? Any questions to Ms Olsen over item number 11, please? If not, I'll seek a mover for the officer's recommendation, please. Councillor Purcell.
I'd like to move that we actually approve not the recommendation, the alternate recommendation.
You would like to move the
Yep.
alternate motion?
That we approve grant the permit with certain conditions.
Right, the alternate motion's been circulated to councillors, so the alternate motion has been moved by councillor Purcell. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dukas. Right, thank you. I'll call on councillor Purcell as mover.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is so much like the one before. It's usually you get chalk and cheese. This one's cheese and cheese. There's no difference between them, and I think the same arguments that were put forward in the last one can be put forward again. So, for the sake of time, I won't go through that process.
Thank you, councillor Purcell. Call on the seconder of the motion, please, councillor Dukas.
I'll reserve, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Dukas. Any councillor wish to speak against the alternate motion? Any councillor wish to speak for the alternative motion? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said before, but particularly with this proposal, it's a fine example of planning for and adapting to significant flood events. We've heard that the building and the design has really gone into detail to plan, if it did flood, how would the property cope and manage with that. So I think it's a great example of how we can learn to live and adapt and overcome with climate change and significant weather events. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Lockett. Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll be speaking in support of the motion that's been put forward to grant a permit. And in doing so, I just wonder that I'll raise a point, a comment maybe the CEO might take on notice, the interim CEO might take on notice that might be beneficial for our planning team and planning officers to have a meet with the CMA so they can better understand what the issues are so we can possibly resolve them at an earlier point.
Right, thank you, councillor Mead. Any councillor wish to speak against the alternative motion? If not, I'll call on councillor Dukas. You've reserved your right. Do you wish to speak?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to say that the flood information summary, very similar to the previous application, and there is nothing in it that should cause any concern with anybody. I mean, if they call some of these things a flood problem, 30 centimetres or 33 centimetres or 50 centimetres, God save us. Anyway, that's a different story. Let's put it to the vote.
Right, thank you, councillor Dukas. I'll call on councillor Purcell as mover of the alternate motion.
Never miss an opportunity, they say. Look, I think this is the right decision for a number of reasons, and without going through them all again, I think it's the logical thing to do. But it's certainly not meant to be any reflection on the council officers. We as councillors have been through this a number of times, so this is not the only time we've debated this. So it may seem that we're taking a cursory glance at it, but that's not true. We've examined it, re-examined it, and examined it again. So it's not likely that we don't accept the officer's recommendation. But in this case, I believe this is the right decision.
Thank you, councillor Purcell. I'll put the alternate motion for item 11 to the vote. All those in favour, for, against, carried 7-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 12, please. Planning permit 72 9 Mile Creek Road, Koroit, Victoria. I'll call on again Manager of Economic Development and Planning, Miss Olsen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So through you, the application is for 72 9 Mile Creek Road, as you suggest. It's for a 2-lot subdivision and for use and development of a dwelling on the newly created vacant lot. The land is currently 3.48 hectares. It's proposed to use the house lot excision rules under the farming zone to create 2 lots, One would be 1.66 hectares and one would be 1.83 hectares. The proposed dwelling is a 3-bedroom, single-storey house. We've seen several of this application type recently where the house lot excision rules in the farming zone are used in order to subdivide a lot into two, and they are of a small size. The subdivision has been considered under the farming zone, and the relevant items that have been considered by the planning officer is whether the use and development relates to sustainable land management. It was considered that it didn't contribute to sustainable land management. Whether it was suitable for the use and development, and whether the proposal is compatible with adjoining and nearby land uses, and as that's predominantly agriculture, they suggested that the surrounding land uses weren't compatible. The impacts from non-agricultural uses on farming area has been taken into account. And even whether the dwelling may be adversely affected from agricultural activities such as dust, noise, odour, use of chemicals and whatnot. So it's found to be incongruous with our planning policy. The proposal was put out to public notice, and we received no objections to the application. But as the proposal is not in keeping with any of the council policies, it's proposed that a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit be issued.
Right, thank you, Ms Olsen. Any questions, please? Yeah, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A question regarding, it's come up in the previous two as well, about the building, and I know this is a planning permit, so how strict is the planning permit will the building need to be for the planning permit? Can I put a 1-bedroom or a 14-bedroom house on the block?
Through you, Mayor, if you wanted to change the dwelling, you would also need to come back and amend your planning permit.
Right.
Accordingly.
So that is the permit for a building like that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms Olsen, when officers are looking at the application, etc., but of course understanding the need that genuine agricultural land has to be protected, was it discovered, or is this land used for genuine agricultural use, even though it's owned agriculture?
Through you, Mayor, this lot is a small lot. However, a substantial portion of it is used for agricultural purposes, such as putting animals in the paddock. I'm not suggesting that they necessarily make their only income from that land, but that is an agricultural purpose.
Right, Councillor Mead.
I should probably use the word commercial agricultural purpose. Thank you. Take it on board.
Right, thank you. Any further questions, Ms Olsen, before we move on? Yeah, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If councillors didn't believe this is agricultural farming land, should we pick that up in the C70?
Through you, Mayor, this is obviously, as you suggest, this land hasn't been identified in Amendment C70 for residential purposes. Perhaps that is an area that could have been considered. However, the surrounding land is of the parcels of land in the surrounding properties are of a substantial size and for agricultural purposes. It's also been identified in the Koroit structure plan that the the town boundary, or the development boundary, ends before that, so it goes along, with the rail trail there.
Right, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Miss Olsen, the block adjoining it on the south side, the Koroit side, I guess, has that block been subdivided?
Through you, Mayor, I believe, some time ago, and I'm not sure how much time, that a house lot excision may have happened from a much larger property. It's already in 2 parcels.
Thank you. I've just a question, may not be able to answer it, but was this block arrived at by a household excision previously?
Through you, Mayor. Oh no, you are. Sorry. To you.
Through you.
The property, I'm unaware of its history in that regard. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just thought it may be double dipping.
Yep.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? If not, I'll seek a mover to the motion, please. Do we have a mover for the motion? Councillor Gleeson?
I'd like to move a motion that we, officers grant the permit. Do you want me to speak to that?
That's the alternate motion, Councillor Gleeson.
Do you want me to speak to it?
We need a second
sorry.
for the Councillor Dukas. It's been moved by the alternate motion. So moved by Councillor Gleeson, seconded by Councillor Dukas. Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. This parcel of land was purchased by the owners in 1991. So they've owned the land now for 31 years. So it hasn't been in a farming, or it's not a farming area, or it hasn't been for that long. I believe it's imperative that we protect farmers and large holdings. But this is its own farming zone, but it's not farming zone. It's been owned, as I said, since 1991. The proponents have received absolutely no objections, so they've obviously the neighbours they've had for a long time. They're not farming it, and I believe it adjoins a lot of similar size or smaller that's already been subdivided. It certainly doesn't in any way limit the neighbours' ability to farm. So having been there, or they've been there that long, I'm sure they're aware of the ramifications of certain things that may or may not happen on farms, as far as sprays and all those sort of things. The idea for these people is to subdivide and build their retirement home, just to build a smaller home. While it's not in the town boundary, it adjoins it, and it gives us as council an opportunity to have another property, which hopefully would then allow a young family or a family to come to the Shire and enjoy what we have to offer. So again, very, very conscious of the officers' recommendations and the work that they do. I'm just going on the fact that it's been a small block. It hasn't been farmed for 31 years, and the people that are there want to retire on it and build their retirement home. So I'm happy to move the motion that we grant a permit for subdivision.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Dukas, the seconder of the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, as everybody realises, it's been lost to commercial agriculture. But there are plenty of studies that show that these rural living type blocks are very, very beneficial to the local community. Apart from bringing, and I believe it's a family member that's going to move in or take the old house and mum and dad are building a new one. Whether it's buying horse feed or running a couple of sheep, the kids want a paddock bomb or a motorbike, you've got to have a rider mower. All those things cost money to buy and to operate. And there is the benefit to the local community. Plus, Koroit doesn't win 8 grand finals without looking after the kids. That's another thing. The fire brigade doesn't do its terrific job because...
They haven't won this year yet.
Oh, well, they will, and they could have last year too, so I'm just adding. You know how it works. No, but seriously, all those things, we need families to move into these rural areas. Councillor Mead talked about, housing affordability. Here's a prime example how we can do it easily. All we got to do is issue a permit and it's done. So I implore my fellow councillors and to all those that have tuned into this meeting, Moyne Shire is about building families and getting people into houses in these small rural areas. So please support this motion and look forward to progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dukas. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion, please? Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I've struggled with this. Seriously struggled with it. I understand the reason for it. I understand, and it's not so much the ability to farm. It's not stopping the ability to farm, and that's not the issue. The issue is every time we allocate a permit to these, it increases the value of the small blocks, and that means the farmers can't buy their neighbours, and that's the whole idea of it. It's the value it puts onto these blocks. As I said, I really struggle with it. We've just been through the Amendment C70 that we all had a chance to say what we believe was farming land and what was residential land and sort of the everywhere in between. This wasn't identified in it. I think once we start just knocking these off one by one, which we have a very tendency to do, that we finish up with no farming land left. We'll have houses on everything. And this area was always, when it was developed, when it was, the Irish came out here, they were all 5 acre blocks. That was enough for the Irish to live on. So we've got hundreds of them. Absolutely hundreds of 5 acre blocks around here. If we put a house on all of them, they will be a rider mower and a sheep and a donkey, but we won't have any farming land left. I said I struggled with it, I really did, and for me, because we've just done the Amendment C70, I won't be supporting it.
Right, thank you, Councillor Purcell. Any other councillor wish to speak against the motion, please? Right, I'll go back to the mover of the motion, please. Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Absolutely hear what Councillor Purcell is saying, because one of the very first motions that came before council when I was a new councillor was a 7 acre subdivision right in the middle of farming land, and I said we can't do that. This parcel of land has been with the owners 31 years. If it had been purchased last week and an opportunist said, Beauty, I'm going to subdivide that, I would be very, very different in my opinion. And I understand that. So they've lived there 31 years, they've supported the community, both community people, and they want to retire and they want a smaller block, and I'm just happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. I'll put the alternate motion to the vote. Those in favour of 4? Against? 5-2. Councillor Dukas, Gleeson, Mead, Foster and Lockett for. Councillor Smith and Purcell against. Right, thank you. We'll move on now. Yeah, right, thank you. We'll move back to item 1, please. Do we need a motion to? You don't need. Right, thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 1, please. The monthly financial performance report, Community and Corporate Services. Mr. Ray, thank you.
Mayor, thank you. The report before you presents the financial position of Council as at 30 April 2022. The report also contains several variations which officers are requesting Council to approve. Those variations are contained within the report. The net effect is an unfavourable variance to the budget to the tune of $82,500. Simplest form, $80,000 is associated with additional contribution requests from the Cranmite Regional Library Corporation to meet costs, and also a recent request from the Port Fairy Football and Netball Club to assist with their lighting throughout the remainder of the current season. Mayor and councillors, the Financial report does foreshadow the financial position as previously approved through recent variations. So a slight improvement in the adopted budget. Any material matters are noted in the notes to the report. Council's working capital continues to trend and track in a healthy way. Investment portfolio is healthy. It's pleasing that interest rates are starting to rise as well, and that will help address one of the budget issues that we've experienced over not just this year but recent financial years as well. And the overdue debtors are relatively in a stable position and not outside of unexpected ranges. And the variations, as I described before, are contained within the report. Also, attached the statutory statements required under the Act as well.
Right, thank you, Mr Ray. Thank you. Any questions to Mr Ray before we move on with the financial report, please? Any questions? If not, I'll seek a mover for the monthly financial performance report, please. Would somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Mead, seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Mead.
Sorry, Mayor, I'd like to move it with the
right.
amendment.
Right. Yep.
That we, the exact wording doesn't have to be this, but that we redirect some unspent funds from the Cattle Underpass funding towards the Community Carbon Offset Program.
Yep. Right, we have an amendment by Councillor Mead. Do we have a seconder for that amendment, please? Councillor Foster. Right, Councillor Mead, would you like to speak to your amendment to the monthly financial report, please?
Well, yeah, I can speak to the motion in general.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Ray, for the presentation. Once again, we go through it thoroughly in the lead up, and a good detailed explanation of where all capital works are up to and updates on each of those, which I know I appreciate, and I'm sure councillors do as well, to see where we are from right across the Shire. I added that in the amendment in there because of the fact that there's a motion coming up later, and if that goes ahead, we know that there'll be $20,000 left over from the $50,000 Cattle Underpass grant scheme, which is supporting agriculture in the Shire by helping farmers better utilise their entire property, whether it be across roads, but also, probably more importantly, it is to make our roads safer. But given the agricultural aspect and there'll be money unspent, I would like to see that remain in agriculture and go towards planting more trees in our Shire to further help council's carbon offset, but also assist farmers with shelter belts and vegetation improvements, etc.
Right, thank you, Councillor Mead. Councillor...
Sorry, just quickly, I'd just like to add there'd be no net nil detriment to the budget.
Right, thank you, Councillor Mead. Councillor Foster.
I'd like to reserve my right.
Thank you. So we've got the monthly financial report moved with an amendment. Or do we address the amendment? Right, thank you, councillors. Would any councillor wish to speak against the amendment, please?
Through your Mayor, or to you, Mayor. So, are we voting on the amendment, or are we voting
We're going to vote on the amendment, and then the amendment becomes part of the motion, the monthly financial report. Yep.
Just a clarification, Mayor and CEO. I think if the original motion is moved with the change, it's not an amendment, it's just the motion.
It's the motion, yep. Right, thank you. Sorry about that. Right, Councillor Purcell.
Well, I will speak against this and then go on. Look, I'm a stickler for process. This is a new one on me, that you can just toss something in at the last minute, and this is the last minute. We have got a process in here that says if you want a councillor motion put up, there's an opportunity to do that, but you need to do it before the meeting, and that's there for a reason. or if something comes up that's urgent, there is a process that you can go through for urgent motions as well. This is just new to me, and if it is going to be the way we do business, so be it. It gives us all an opportunity to go in another way.
Right, thank you, Councillor Purcell. Anybody else wish to speak against the amendment? Yeah, Councillor Gleeson.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Purcell's words, because we're going through budgetary stuff at the moment, and you know, there's been a lot of requests for other things, and we haven't we've got them above the line or below the line, you know, and I just think that procedurally, I know that's going to be there. It's going to go as a surplus into next year's budget, you know, but just the process, I think, is what I question.
Right, thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak against the motion? Yep. The amendment, sorry.
Yeah, it's actually the motion. And while we're on it, I also wanted to, and I wouldn't be voting for it anyway, because the Regional Library Corporation, $80,000, I have a problem with. And seeing they're both together now, I definitely won't be supporting it. The Regional Library Corporation, $80,000 for the, this is sort of the wash-up of the whole thing. The agreement, the four-party agreement, said that when the Library Corporation, if anyone pulled out, they had to pay all the expenses. Part of this is the cost of what happened when Colac and Warrnambool pulled out of the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation. We should not be paying this. This is money that should be paid by Colac and Warrnambool, and because that is a written agreement. I specifically asked at the time whether everything was included, and it was said that it was all included. It obviously wasn't. There's no way I could support that. You know, $80,000 is a lot of money coming out of our budget. It's not our fault. We didn't want to leave the corporation. It was very specifically written into the agreement that the ones who pulled out had to pay. Absolutely no doubt. We should not be paying that.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'll just seek clarification. We have Councillor Mead's amendment, and now we have Councillor Purcell's. Where do we go? Acting CEO.
So, through you, Mayor, my understanding is that Councillor Mead has proposed an amendment to the current motion. Councillor Purcell is rejecting the motion outright.
Yeah.
Both components.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mead.
Just to help with clarification, I think if someone is speaking against the motion, you should foreshadow the officer's motion, otherwise it could be lost altogether.
Yeah, right, thank you. Well, would somebody like to foreshadow the amended motion, please? Sorry?
Yeah. I'll foreshadow that we pass the financial agreement without the Corangamite Regional Library portion or the
20,000
or the other portion.
Right, thank you. That's been moved by Councillor Purcell. Do we have a seconder? No, we don't need a seconder.
But I foreshadow, I will second.
Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Purcell, would you like to speak to
No,
your...
only if it's lost.
Right.
So anyone else against it?
Anybody else wish to speak against this motion, please? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. Back to Councillor Mead, sorry. For Councillor Foster. Yeah.
We've made it hard for you. Okay, so I will obviously speak in favour of the amended motion. In relation to the $20,000 allocation to farm forestry, which is effectively what it is in some sense, I think it's an opportunity here to direct some funds for that would have been used for agriculture but weren't, and because they haven't been used, they will just go into the general revenue and be lost. So I think it's an opportunity to support agriculture and bonus environment. So I think that's fine. In relation to the Corangamite Regional Library Corporation, I think if we had perfect hindsight, we would probably have dissolved the corporation at the point when the other two councils exited. However, that was not the decision at the time, and the corporation has continued to operate for 12 months and is now going to dissolve as of June 30. So there have been some additional costs incurred in that 12 months. It's really clear that Moyne Shire Council is a debtor here. If we don't pay this money now, the liquidator will come after us afterwards. So we can't escape this. It's not, we have to pay at some point. And I think if the liquidator seeks those costs later, the risk is that they'll be even higher. So in my view, we need to do this. We're about to enter into an agreement, a shared library services agreement with our neighbour, Corangamite Shire, and in the spirit of good partnership, Corangamite Shire has already agreed that they will allocate this money. So I think we're going to leave them high and dry if we don't, and that's not a great way to enter into a new partnership.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Right, anybody wish to speak against? Back to Councillor Mead.
No problem, thanks, Mayor. Just in summary, last year we had 74 applicants in total for that community carbon offset program, which was extremely popular amongst Moyne Shire ratepayers, and only 19 of them were successful due to the oversubscription. So I think it's an opportunity now in this current financial year budget to redirect some of those unspent funds to this magnificent grant program that we offer at the Moyne Shire. So I ask councillors for the support in the motion that I've put.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. I'll put the motion to the vote, please. Those in favour, for? Against? Right, for Councillor Lockett, Foster, Mead and Smith, and against Councillor Purcell, Gleeson and Dukas. Thank you, councillors. Right, we'll move on now to item 2, please. Right.
Through the Mayor, I just declare conflict on this item.
Thank you. Right, item number 2, please. Chief Executive Officer, Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee. Caller Mr. Ray, please.
Mayor, thank you. And the purpose of this report is to receive, or the fact of the recommendation is to note the minutes of the Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee meeting, which was held on the 31st of May. I would probably foreshadow that should read council receive the minutes as opposed to note. Thanks, Mayor.
Right, thank you, Mr. Ray. So you'd recommend that the council receive the motion, the minutes?
Receive the minutes, correct.
Right, any questions or discussion of Mr. Ray before we put it, seek a mover? If not, I'll seek a mover of the motion, please. Councillor Mead.
Happy to move it with the suggested changes.
Yep. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Lockett. Right, Councillor Mead.
I believe that the minutes of the meeting were true and accurate, and happy to move the motion.
Right, thank you, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with my esteemed colleagues' comments.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against the amended recommendation? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, 4. Against, 7-0. Thank you.
6.
7?
Oh,
yeah, we've lost one.
Oh, Councillor Gleeson.
That's all right. 6-0. Yep.
6. Mayor,
Councillor Purcell.
could I just ask a question? So the process from here, the remuneration and employment was to appoint a new CEO. The process is that council will consider as a confidential item later in the meeting. Is that the way we're going to do it, so that the community knows who the
Mr. Ray,
will be?
where do we go moving forward?
Mayor, there is a agenda item for council to consider as a confidential item, the appointment of a CEO, and the appointment process will be in accordance with the recommendation of that report.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Happy with that, Councillor Purcell? Thank you. Right, we'll move on now to item 3, the Belfast Aquatics Insurance, Community and Corporate Services. Mr Ray.
Mayor, thank you. This has been a subject of much public interest in recent months, and officers have assisted greatly the Belfast Aquatics Committee to secure insurance for, I guess, for the better part of the 2022-2023 financial year. That insurance is at a significantly higher cost than the previous recurrent amount that the committee were able to accommodate within their operating budget. Given the significant increase in the premium, the committee is faced with a difficult situation of not being able to pay it and possibly forced into wind up, and in the absence of any other benefactor, has sought the assistance of the council to meet those obligations over the next financial year, or in fact have requested that council pay 10 instalments, around $91,000. Mayor, the recommendation is structured in such a way that officers would be seeking to work and collaborate with the committee to establish and determine what the appropriate operating model is for the delivery or provision of a heated indoor swimming pool for Port Fairy. And in that regard, that ongoing cooperation is subject to the satisfaction of the CEO. And in the recommendation is also authorising that the CEO be given the approval to expend monies to engage a suitably qualified consultant to undertake a piece of work that will bring back to council for consideration and to determine that appropriate operating model. Given the urgent nature of the works, it's also recommended that the CEO be exempt from the procurement policy requirements. It's nothing you probably need to add to that. As I said, it's been a subject of much great interest. Officers and council have assisted greatly the committee over recent months, and the request from the committee is before you.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Any questions, please? Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr Ray, within the last 4 to 5 years, there have been some reports and reviews done as per normal process, with some officers' reports that followed those. Will they be used in addition to what we have here?
Mayor, thank you. Councillor Mead, I think that's our starting point, rather than sort of start from scratch. I think we will review the existing work that's been undertaken. As you alluded to, it's been subject of previous officer reports. Our internal auditors have looked at the operations. We would probably look at what recommendations have or haven't been implemented as part of that process. But this is probably something where time is of the essence. We would like to solve this situation sooner or later. And what it's about is trying to get the best outcome and best value for not only the community but also ratepayers across the municipality as well.
Thank you, Mr Ray. You're right, Councillor Purcell. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Would there be any upfront saving if we paid it as a lump sum rather than the monthly payment?
I think that opportunity for savings has gone now. They've actually taken up the monthly instalment option. There would have been a saving. That would have been, let's call it $5,000. Don't quote me on that. I would need to take that on notice as to the accurate amount. The monthly premium is at a high cost, and it's effectively the notional interest component of not paying that as a lump sum.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion to Mr Ray before we seek a move of the Auckland? Yeah, Councillor Purcell, and then Councillor Doukas.
And I'm sure through the Mayor, I'm sure it's already been. Could the committee be set up as a committee of council under our umbrella?
Mayor, through you, it could be set up through a delegated committee or a community asset committee, noting that we don't own the assets on the land per se. These are options that need to be explored over the next 6 to 12 months, and I won't foreshadow what they are, but I think that's a very good suggestion, Councillor Purcell, and something we can take forward.
Thank you, Mr Ray. If there's no further discussions or questions, I'll seek a mover of item number 3, please.
No, I'm good, thanks. Yep.
Sorry. Right, thanks. I seek a mover of the item number 3, Belfast Aquatics Insurance. Moved by Councillor Lockett. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Foster. Councillor Lockett as mover.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just writing, the council loves the pool, the community loves the pool and the community runs the pool. It's a Freudian slip because I think the council loves the pool as well. Pools are very tricky things to make money from. We know that, particularly commercial pools. Kids learn to swim in pools. Physical health, mental health, the rehab, they've got the little ramp there, so lots of physical rehab occurs there. It's a fantastic facility, and council needs to do everything it can do and is doing and has been doing what they need to keep the pool open and running. We also have a responsibility to our ratepayers that it's not a bottomless pit that we have, but we, I think, have been in talks and will continue to stay in talks with Belfast Aquatics. But it is a great facility and we need to do everything we can to keep it open and keep it running for the town and the wider Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I think of all of the issues that I get accosted for in the streets of Port Fairy, this would be up there. People imploring me to do whatever council can do to save our pool. And I think council has been doing so much behind the scenes, and I just want to thank our team, our staff, for all of the support they've given the Belfast Aquatics volunteers and the volunteer committee over the past several months. I think it's probably gone unstated, but there's been a lot of support provided to keep the doors open. And as Councillor Lockett says, I think we do need to do everything in our power to keep that facility open, because it's not just used by people in Port Fairy, but from a much wider catchment area across the Shire. And I very much welcome the opportunity that this recommendation poses for our team to continue to work with the volunteers to shore up a much more sustainable future for the pool.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Anybody else wish to speak for the motion, please? Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to commend the officers for the way that their recommendations have been structured. I think council have been a fantastic support, but we can't just be the backdrop every year. And I think that having met with the committee, they are seeking guidance and they're seeking support and they're seeking expertise. And I think that the motion before us, or the recommendation before us, will hopefully mean that they will be willing to join with the officers and seek a suitable and viable outcome. Because, we've already said we don't want to be sitting here this time next year or the year after or the year after. And so in light of our little insurance shock, hopefully there'll be some great outcomes as a result of the process. And I'm confident that the committee will be more than willing to assist the officers in their desire to find a suitable outcome. So.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I echo all of that, 100%, and I think most of us do. The bit that I don't like, though, is 2B. I think the tone of that is really not what we're... It doesn't read of joining together and working together. I don't like it at all, and I wonder whether the mover and the seconder would consider taking that out. If you have a look at the note from the chair, she actually says, and the committee and council, this will give committee and council time to investigate a sustainable operating for the benefit of the community. So they're obviously looking to work with us. They're not trying to work against us, and I think the tone of that really looks like, you know, we've got the big hammer and we're going to give you a whack if, you know, if you don't do it. And I just wonder whether the mover and seconder would consider taking B out of the motion.
I'll put it to the mover and the seconder.
Yeah, happy to, take that out of the deep end and throw it away. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mayor.
So the motion now stands as it is with item 2B removed.
Can I just seek a clarification then? So, not that I expect them to, but should the committee not be willing to work with us? Sorry?
It'll come to us.
It'll come back to us so that we could, in effect, stop monthly payments. As long as I think that safeguard's there.
Everybody clear on that? Yep. Right, thank you. Anybody wish to speak against the amended motion, please?
Mr Mayor, I'd like a clarification, please, on number 4.
Right.
Can we do it? Can we exempt the CEO? And what's the idea of number 4?
Right, Mr Ray.
Yeah, thank you, through you. You set the policy framework of council under the Local Government Act, including procurement, and you have the ability to exempt those requirements as well. In terms of the reason for that is there is council's previously worked with a consultant to undertake a piece of work to assist the committee get to or secure the insurance. If it's appropriate, we will continue that relationship. If that's not appropriate, we'll then go to market or seek the best placed professionals to be able to undertake the piece of work. Now, that may be based on a recommendation, but at the very least, if that's a substantive piece of work, that would trigger council's tender thresholds, and that would delay the process. And so this is about not delaying the process and trying to get traction and get the work done.
So, just so I'm clear, I've been told here today that we can exempt the Chief Executive Officer from that requirement under the Local Government Act.
If that's a decision of council, yes.
So we can override the Local Government Act?
No, you've got a policy, and the policy that council previously adopted last year or 2020 had a range of delegations which council have delegated to CEO and officers around procurement. Now, you can exempt officers from those requirements if it's a resolution of council.
Thank you. Comfortable with that, Councillor Dukas?
No.
Right, thank you. Right, anybody, Councillor Purcell?
Yeah, it's not in the Act, it's actually one of our policies. Yeah, procedures probably rather, it's not in the Act. But I presume 4 relates to 3.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, it's one and above, but if, for example, the cost of undertaking that work exceeds the thresholds that would trigger a tender process, that just extends the time to undertake that process. So we would probably certainly go out and get quotations for that piece of work. But if it was at a point where it was of a nature that required tendering, it's only going to delay the work effort. We want to get on and get this moved quickly, and the way to do that is to exempt the Chief Executive from quotation and tender requirements. Perhaps the more palatable approach is to exempt the Chief Executive from tender requirements, but have the CEO adhere to quotation requirements, i.e. 3 quotes.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Councillor Purcell?
Look, I'm not too concerned about that, but I wouldn't mind having an upper limit on that, that's all. Up to 50,000, 500,000, I don't...
Mayor, through you, the limit is part 3, which is the CEO delegations. If that's too high...
300,000.
Depending on what it is, that's
300.
Buildings, I think, and construction, and 150. But that should be in here. those figures should be in here. If you're going to put
Councillor Mead.
exempt chief...
Sorry, Mayor, just, we have a motion in front of us.
Yep.
If councillors would like to change the motion, they can foreshadow and speak against this one, but we've had the chance for questions and
I'm seeking
earlier.
clarification, councillor
We
Mead.
had the chance for that earlier, is we're out to speak.
Look, I think we've had
for or
fair
against.
discussion. Anybody else wish to speak against the motion, please?
I move the motion be put.
Right, we've got the motion before us, moved by councillor Lockett. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to, as previously stated, thank the officers for all the fantastic work they've done in working with Belfast Aquatics. Thank Belfast Aquatics and their committee and the wider community, and also encourage the community to care about the pool. If you don't have a membership, buy a membership. Support the pool, because at the end of the day, it costs a heap of money to run, and they need all the support that they can get from the community. And as I said before, the community loves the pool, and the community run the pool, and council support the pool.
Thanks, councillor Lockett. We'll put the motion number 3, Belfast Aquatics Insurance, to the vote. Those in favour, for. Against. That's 6-1. Councillor Dukas against. Thank you.
Do it properly or don't do it at all.
Just to clarify, the recommendation was carried without 2B.
Yes, yeah, the amended motion.
Or not to be.
That is the question, councillor Gleeson.
Shakespeare.
Right, thank you. We've done number 4. We'll move on to number 5.
We've done that.
Best pun in 5 years, Mayor.
Would somebody like to move that we, on block, items 5, 6 and 7, did we include 8 or not?
No.
No, sorry.
Through to
5, 6
21.
and 7.
It's through the 21 if we
Was it
can.
5, 6, 7 and 9? Which, yep, councillor Mead.
I move that we go to items 5, 6 and 7 and deal with them in a block, thanks.
Right, thanks, councillor Mead. Everybody comfortable with that? Do we have a seconder for that? Yeah, councillor Lockett. Right. Hand over now to Community and Corporate Services Director, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, thank you. Through you. Effectively, it's a revision of existing delegations that's been undertaken by Council Governance Coordinator. The paper, or the recommendations are as presented, and it's effectively recommended Council approve those instruments of delegation and apply the common seal respectively.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Any questions or discussion, please? If not, I'll seek a mover on block of items 5, 6 and 7, please. Do we have a mover, please? Councillor Mead. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Foster. Councillor Mead.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ray. As we mentioned, they're all very similar of nature. They've been through workshop. Council had the opportunity to ask questions and clarifications on them, and had the opportunity then. So I'm happy to move them as a block. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
Right. Anybody wish to speak for the motion, please? Councillor Gleeson.
Just quickly to commend the officers, enormous amount of work, and you know, it's just important we continue to recognise the contribution they make to make our job a lot easier. So thank them for their contribution.
Anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Anybody wish?
Clarification, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor, just for the record, what numbers are they? 5,
5,
6
6
and 7?
and 7.
5, 6 and 7, thank you.
Right. Anybody wish to speak against the motion, please? If not, I refer to the mover, Councillor Mead.
Nothing further to add, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, 4. Against, 7-0. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item number 8, community representation on community engagement committees. Economic development and planning. I'll call on Mr. Darby Lee.
Thanks, Matt. Councillors, the report we have before you outlines the situation we currently have with our wind farm CECs, where it shows that in December last year, Council appointed councillors to represent the various CRCs, and appointed members to those 7 committees, and this process ended up with one councillor, Councillor Dukas, being appointed to 5 of the 7 CECs. Subsequently, you adopted a set of charters in March this year which outlines a basis of membership saying that any particular councillor cannot sit on more than 4 committees. So the situation you have at the moment is that the current distribution of councillors across the CECs is not compliant with the charter you adopted. So the report recommends that Councillor Dukas resigns from one committee, your selection, and another councillor takes up that position.
Thank you,
It's the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Any questions to Mr Lee regarding councillor item number 8, please? Right, I'm seeking...
I'll ask a question, see it concerns me. At what time of the year, or in what year did we go out to the community with our survey to get a feel of what they want in the charter?
I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor Dukas, so I'm not aware of that.
Does anybody know? I thought it'd be in the report.
No, I'm not sure.
In what report?
Well, there was a survey that went out to all the CEC members.
Yeah.
Right, remember that?
About a year ago.
Righto. So was there any mention of membership being on 4 in that report?
Yep.
No, there wasn't.
I seem to recall there was.
Well, better have another read.
Right, thank
I'm
you. Look,
I'm just highlighting
Yep.
the fact, Mr Mayor, that
Yep.
nothing came out of that. There was no mention of being on only 4 CEC committees. And that was in about, just prior to November. Then we get our little meeting with the Clean Energy Council and using
Stick to
terms,
the-
but
stick to
I'm
the-
sticking to this.
Yep,
I'm just asking why do we have to be on 4? Why can't we be on 6? Why can't we be on any ones we want to be?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Dukas, this came to council laws for that vote, which was carried unanimously at the 1 March council meeting, where the charter specified up to 4 for each councillor. So it was put out through the agenda then, it was advertised then, and it was approved then.
True, and I voted for it as well.
Yep.
You sure did.
Yeah, and guess what? What month is this one? We're in June.
Yeah.
And the pennies dropped. I'm on 5. How exciting.
Right, thank you. Look,
I just think it's a little bit ironic that there was nothing mentioned of this when we done our survey and we got feedback from all the committee.
Well, that was a
Then in March, it slips in March.
that was a
into the charter.
recommendation from the survey, Councillor Dukas, so we've got to stick to that. Councillor
Yeah,
Gleeson.
righto.
Councillor
Anyway.
Gleeson.
No, it's a recommendation in the charter. We adopted it. We've just got to deal with it.
Yep.
I'm just pointing that out that there was no recommendation before that. Only in the charter, after the CEC, after the Clean Energy meeting, that it came to pass.
Councillor
That's
Purcell.
all.
Could I move that Councillor Dukas resign from the Hexham Community Engagement Committee and Councillor Foss be appointed to the Hexham Community Engagement Committee?
Right, thank you, Councillor
Point of
Purcell.
order. It's my choice to resign.
Well, I
And I'll
think just
resign
looking at
and-
what's the officer's recommendation, and we've got a recommendation that Councillor Dukas resigns from the Hexham Wind Farm and is replaced by Councillor Foster.
No, well, I'd rather resign from the Dundonnell one because it's furthest away.
Well, we've got the motion before us from Councillor Purcell. Is there a
Well, you're
second?
making a mockery of the council here, you people.
Is there a seconder to the motion? We only can deal with what's before us. I'm sorry, Councillor Dukas.
Well, Councillor Dukas isn't on the Dundonnell one, so that's going to be awkward.
Right,
Yes, I am.
so, but we have a motion moved by Councillor Purcell. Do we have a seconder? Right, Councillor Purcell, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I thought it was time we got moving on this. The charter, as Councillor Gleeson correctly said, we all voted on it and we all agreed on it. It's now our charter. It's nobody else's charter. It was put to us, we agreed on it. Councillor Dukas, I know, needs to come off one of those committees, and Hexham was the first on the list, so that was...
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Purcell. You've asked me to resign. You've sacked me. There's a difference.
No, we have,
There's a
Councillor
difference. You
Dukas,
want me
we've
to
got a
resign?
motion.
Just ask
Order,
me to
please.
resign.
Order. We have a motion before us, I'm sorry, and we'll stick to the motion, please. I'll call on Councillor Foster as seconder of the motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that the community engagement committees are incredibly important, and if you know, I probably need another committee. I don't need another committee, but I'm very happy to step into this because I do think that they're very important, and so happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Anybody wish to speak for the motion, please?
I know I'm not ready to sum up, but if Councillor Dukas wanted to foreshadow a motion, he's entitled to do so.
Now, my point is, Mr Mayor, that I must resign. Councillor Purcell has sacked me.
True.
He can't do that. It says,
Look,
Councillor Dukas to resign. I will resign. I'll resign from the Dundonald Wind Farm.
You're not on the Dundonald.
Yes, I am.
No,
Well, I
you're
have
not.
been every other time.
Look, sorry, we've got a motion. Yes, Councillor. Sorry, acting CEO.
Through you, Mayor, on the table that's associated with the report, it does not specify that Councillor Dukas is on Dundonald.
Right, look, we've got a, sorry, Councillor Mead.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mayor. Just
It's
not.
Speak to the motion, speak in support of the motion, and just to add that I believe at a previous workshop it was asked of Councillor Dukas which one he would like to resign from, so it could help councillors, and I recall Councillor Dukas saying put it to the meeting, so that's what's happened. Councillor Purcell has moved Hexham, seconded by Councillor Foster, and that's the motion we have, and I speak in support of that.
Thank you, Councillor Mead, for the clarification. Would anybody like to speak for the motion, please? Yeah, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just wish to thank Councillor Foster. I noticed that we both have one CEC, but many other commitments, and really appreciate that. Thank you.
Look, I'd like to speak for the motion too, and thank Councillor Foster for stepping up, and also to thank Councillor Dukas for his input.
I haven't resigned. I've been sacked. Get it right, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, well,
Because you'll be asked to explain publicly.
I'm more than happy, so thank you. We've got the motion before us, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. And with the consent of the seconder, I'd like to change A to that Councillor Dukas be removed from the Hexham Community Engagement. I think removed is probably better than resign.
Yep.
And with that, I don't need to sum up any. If the seconder is willing to accept that.
Yep. Right, thank you. We'll put it to the vote, please. Those in favour of that, please. In favour, please. Against. 6-1. Councillor Dukas against. Thank you.
You had the chance to say which one.
You're too slow.
Right, thank you. Councillor, we'll move on to item number 9, please. Appointment and Authorisations, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Economic Development and Planning, please. Mr Lee.
Councillors, the report before you outlines the delegations that we're proposing to put in place, and happy to take any questions.
Right, any questions of Mr Lee on item number 9, please? If not, I'll seek a mover, please, and seconder. Would somebody like to move? Councillor
Yes,
Gleeson,
I'd like to
seconder,
move.
please. Councillor Mead. Councillor Gleeson.
Necessity under the Act. Happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Mead as seconder.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
Anybody wish to speak for the motion? Anybody wish to speak against? Call on Councillor Gleeson to summarise.
No need, Mayor, thank you.
Oh, sorry, nothing further. I'll put item number 9 to the vote, please. All those in favour, 4. Against, 7-0. Thank you. Right, we'll move on now to item number 12, I think.
13.
No, 13. Right, thank you. Asset Management and Framework, a very large document. I'll call on the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Farrell. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the Mayor, this is the last task as part of the Local Government Act changes. The Asset Management Framework comprises an asset plan that is a 10-year plan, asset management policy, and 6 specific asset management plans in the key asset classes. As the Mayor has indicated, a big body of work, a set of outcomes and an improvement plan that we'll be working on over the next number of years, and we'll be providing a state of the assets report to council on an annual basis to demonstrate the improvement in activity under this framework.
Thank you, Ms Farrell. Any questions or discussion before we seek a mover of the motion? If not, I'll seek a mover and seconder of item number 13. Moved by Councillor Gleeson, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Right, Councillor Gleeson.
Thanks, Mayor. Talk about a body of work. You know, we've been asked to adopt the asset plan for 2022, which incorporates about 8 or 9 documents totalling 437 pages. A huge body of work, and to be congratulated. You know, having looked through most of the documents, because I got a bit lost after 436. Final statements, final plans. It gives us direction, but more importantly, it gives us a yearly update on what we have done, what we haven't done, the good things, the bad things, so and things that we can address along the way. You know, and I mentioned earlier some of the things about the open space, and so it lets us have a look at what you do, and it gives us some checks and balances. So happy to support it.
Right, thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Purcell.
I'll reserve my right. Thank you, Mayor.
Right. Anybody wish to speak in favour of the motion? Look, I'd just like to say a great document, very comprehensive, great work by our officers to compile this, and it gives us some direction to move forward over the next 10 years with a very large asset base in, and it gives our officers a direction where they go in the next 10 years. So thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Anybody wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put it, call on Councillor Gleeson to summarise, please.
No need for me.
Right. Yeah, if not, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, 4. Against, carried 7-0. Thank you. Right, we move on now to item 14. Stock Underpass Funding, Largo Pastoral Trust. Infrastructure and Environment, please.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. This is an application to our Stock Underpass funding program. So Council, as you're aware, we have a program where we provide a small amount of support to local farmers seeking to undertake quite significant, expensive underpass works. In this case, it's a build of about 150,000, and we'll get about 400 head of stock off the road on a daily basis, which will be great in terms of the improvement for road safety and limiting further damage. So seeking support from Council to allocate the usual amount of funding, which is a grant of $10,000 towards this particular application.
Thank you, Ms Farrell. Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll seek a mover of item number 14, Stock Underpass Funding, please. Councillor Mead, moved. Councillor Purcell, second. Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Ms Farrell, for the presentation. Agreed that it would be terrific for the safety of those of the Moonshine road users to get 400 cows off the road, and I read in the report they're crossing them, you know, twice a day, which takes up a lot of time, but it's also, you know, dangerous, especially in non-daylight hours as well. So happy to support it, and I think it's a good program and grand opportunity that Council offers.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. Councillor Purcell is seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Echo those remarks. It is a great program. $10,000, I'm sure, is well and truly welcomed by the participants involved. It's a pity the state or the federal government wouldn't get involved and help us get more of these in place, because it is a great program, and it does a lot to the roads even to keep the stock off.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Any councillor wish to speak for the motion? Yeah, look, I'll just jump in there. Look, I think it has been said, but a great initiative for the council to support. Very big capital investment by the farmers, but it comes back to safety as #1 priority for any of the decisions we make in the Shire. So very pleased to support it. Councillor Gleeson.
Very
then Councillor-
briefly, Mayor, if I can, just to continue on from Councillor Purcell's comments about the state government, because certainly a highlight a month or so ago was our visit to Parliament, and it was a very significant part of our advocacy. So to the farmers out there, you know, we're really supporting you, and this is just one way we can do it, but it would be terrific if the state government could jump on board just to reinforce that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Dukas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The start and finish dates are April. That won't have any significance because
No,
probably
it's a-
haven't started.
Yeah, so through the Mayor, it has actually started now, so.
It has?
Yes, that has started.
So all the other information is already in.
Yes, they've done it.
Right, thank you. Any further discussion before I go back to the move? Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just a good opportunity with election coming up later, state election later in the year, that we certainly think it's worthy of major parties to throw their support behind reinstating the CUPS program, which is the Cattle Underpass scheme, to further assist and add further funding for farmers, not only in Moyne but across the state, to apply for such funding.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, 4. Against, carried 7-0. Thank you, councillors. Right, we'll move on now to item number 15. Resource support for the delivery of the Capital Works program. I'll hand over to the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Ms Farrell. Thank you.
Thank you. So through the Mayor, tough one to have at the last point in the day. So this report is seeking support from Council for additional resources to support the delivery of our Capital Works program. We've been, I guess, blessed with additional funds from state and federal government sources through economic stimulus, and whilst that's a great thing, the problems that is causing in terms of our delivery of the overall Capital Works budget is highlighted there, in particular with the carry forward amount for the current year being just shy of a $9 million carry forward. So this report is proposing that, given we have a substantial capital program next year, which will be compounded the year after as well with further economic stimulus funds, that we seek additional support to both engage additional dedicated staff to undertake project management, and also some contingency funds to enable us to undertake projects, whether that be through contract work, specialist advisory work and the like. So this is before Council to seek that support.
Thank you, Ms Farrell. Right, any questions to Ms Farrell regarding item number 15 before we seek a mover? Councillor Dukas?
Yeah, thank you. Part 2, commit to a further allocation for 23-24. Do we really need that in there? Because we can vote commit, but until it goes past in budget, it's really only tokenism.
Thank you, Ms Farrell.
Yes, through the Mayor, that's probably a very good point, Councillor Dukas, and mindful that the first recommendation was more definitive in terms of approve a commitment to the forthcoming budget, but obviously you can't approve the future budget, so it was a notional commitment, and perhaps it can be reworded too.
Well, I mean, yeah. Maybe that gives people confidence that we're thinking that far ahead. I'm happy to leave it there.
Councillor Gleeson?
No, I think that is, thanks Mayor, sorry, that's great that we're thinking that far ahead. But I'm just saying, if we only commit for 1 year, which we could probably only do, how does that affect us as far as attracting potential candidates if it's say a 12-month contract versus a 2-year contract?
Yes, well, that is a point. So, you know, if we have a notional commitment from Council, we would go forward with 2-year contracts. Otherwise, we would have to reduce that. And in the current climate, it is challenging at the moment to recruit for people. So the more we can do to attract people, longer term tenure would be a more appealing way to do it.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mead, then Councillor Purcell.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms Farrell, you know, I think I've mentioned mentioned earlier, read the report, not necessarily specific on what or how much financially or project-wise will be delivered with this extra funds allocated. Would it be fair to either have a commitment or add to the recommendation that council receive bi-monthly or quarterly update on progress of this particular department and where this money's been spent? And
Yep, so through the Mayor, I'd be more than happy to add that to the report, and certainly that would be our intent. Where we were better resourced, we would be in a much better position to have that capacity to actually undertake more detailed and more regular updates.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I personally would like to have more detail about what we can do with our current workforce and, you know, so what is left and what we would then get done with the additional. But can you tell me which components of or which projects have a component for project management in them? Because, you know, some of those are quite significant, like the LR CIP 2.7, the remote roads of 11 million. Have they got a component that is project management component of those?
So through the Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice in regards to those two specific programs. But I think it's fair to say that there will be a combination of approaches, and it would be subject to the particular fund that we were working with, or in the case where it's totally council-funded projects, then obviously the project management cost is entirely on us. But you know, we would be looking to capitalise any costs where we could, and I'm happy to take that on notice and do some more analysis of that.
Right, thank you, Mr. Sorry.
Continue on if I
yeah,
may.
no.
Look, and I support the concept, you know, because I don't think any of us want to have carryover projects, and but in the background where you said it's been based on the state and federal government's economic stimulus programs and could continue, there is a possibility or a likelihood that there will be belt tightening in both state and definitely federal, that we may see a real drop-off in funding. So we need to be careful not to have nothing to do at the end of this. It's just I guess, warning bells that, you know, happy times may not last forever.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Yep. Right, any further questions or discussion before we seek a mover of the motion? Right, I'll seek a mover of item number 15, resorts support for the delivery of a capital works program. Moved by Councillor Mead, seconded by Councillor Foster. Councillor Mead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I certainly thank Ms Farrell for putting this report forward. It's been a discussion that councillors have had around the workshop table for the whole, throughout the budget discussions that we've had, and draft budget's obviously out now, and budget will be adopted later in the month, and we realise how much capital works in that to get done, not only for this financial year but for the previous financial years that have been carryovers because of the successful funding applications that the council have put forward with support of council, but council officers have put them forward and received that through several rounds of the former federal government's LRCIP funding that was successful, that has further exacerbated the backlog of capital works that have to be done. And in my view, it's critical for the council or a board to provide significant or necessary resources for the officers and executive team to deliver on the projects that we ask them to deliver on. This has come to us that this is required over the next 2 years to, I would certainly hope and expect a significant high percentage of the projects will be completed or certainly underway and close to complete within that time frame. It's a lot of money outside our budget to put towards it, $1 million over 2 years. It's very significant, so I certainly expect to see great results for the benefit of our community with projects getting done, concrete poured, etc. Openings for everyone to attend within the community within that time frame. So I'll certainly like to move the motion with the addition number 3, that council receive quarterly updates on the progress of the project management team. That'll do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. The amended motion will read with quarterly updates. Sorry, could you run the...
Quarterly updates on the progress of the project management.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Mead. Councillor Foster, you're comfortable with the amended motion? Thank you. Councillor Foster.
I think, as we've talked about and as is outlined in this report, our average capital program has gone from 16 million or thereabouts to 41 million, and that's a 250% increase. We couldn't, on any number, we couldn't expect our staff to do all of that within the current resourcing. It's not only about keeping projects moving through. I think all of us as councillors want to see things happening and want to see things progress, but it's also about the health and well-being of our staff as well. So I'm very happy to support this. I hope it leads also to building the capacity of our team in terms of project management expertise as well. So I look forward to hearing the quarterly reports.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Anybody wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Gleeson.
Briefly, Mayor, thank you. I think Councillor Mead's alluded to the accountability of it. It's a big investment by council. But we've just come out of 2 years of COVID. Our staff have not been under as much pressure ever probably as they are or have been in the last 2 years. And as a consequence, we have a backlog of work, and we've had some great, federal and state money. They've asked for our support. I think we need to give them our support.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson. Anybody wish to speak for the motion? Yeah, look, I just think it's a fantastic problem to have with a massive budget. We've got to deliver projects moving forward the next couple of years, and I think this will help our overstretched staff at the moment, and hopefully we can, as Councillor Mead said, in 2 years we can see some major projects ticked off. Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak against the motion. I'd be happy to support it as a budget variations, but the report's just too light on detail. It's $1 million. It's one of our biggest spends ever. We don't have a list of the priorities are. We don't know how much of the current works we can actually take out and do project management out of those. There's a huge amount of information not here. Too light on detail for me. I need a list of a lot of it. A lot of it's unscoped. I just couldn't support it. Happy to have another look at it as a budget variation later on, which we can do at any time. But I couldn't support it at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Anybody else wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll call on to mover of the motion, Councillor Mead, to sum up, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Certainly, as I alluded to, I can understand Councillor Purcell's concerns. As I mentioned, the report is not very specific on which projects and what, but I have confidence in the team that they'll be able to deliver on the projects that are ready to go and of necessity to get done, especially for funding, deadline requirements, etc. And also, part of the reason why I've asked for it to be added to quarterly reports is to really ensure that council keep a very close eye on the progress, because it is a huge amount of money, and I guess that if not significant progress has been made, council can always look at next year's commitment. But I'm fully, I'm confident and support the team, back the team to get the job done with this extra money, and really see some great projects getting delivered and done in the next 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. I'll put item number 15, resource support for the delivery of the Capital Works program, to the vote. Those in favour, for. For, against. That's 5-2. Councillor Purcell and Councillor Dukas against. Thank you, councillors. Right, we'll move on to item number 16, Mayor and Councillors' report. I have one amendment there which slipped by, and that was the 4th of May. I did not attend the Hawkesdale Community Group meeting, so that one, I missed that one. Any further questions on that?
May the 4th be with you.
If not,
Yes, thanks, Mayor.
yeah, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a question on the Rural Southwest Regional meeting from MAV. Any updates or reports there for the wider council on that meeting?
No. The mayor's meeting. No, I just can't recall that one.
That's all right, you can take that on notice, Mayor,
Yeah, take it
no
on
problem.
notice, yeah. I'd have to look back through my diary, thanks. Right, any further discussion on that? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mayor. Just, in relation to the Port Fairy Business Drop-In session on May the 17th, which was really well attended, it might be one for you, Ms Farrell, do we have some next steps from that? I know that we talked about having the consultant come back and speak to our traders.
Through you, Matt, yes, the consultant's getting back to me, or has got back to me. We're just arranging a date, so he's actually asked to have an hour of councillors' time. The next time he comes down, he wants to go one-on-one with some traders, and then get the Traders Collective together to talk to them, and then to have a working session with councillors. And we're just going through the diaries at the moment to organise that session.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr Lee.
Right, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Gleeson.
Just a correction, Mayor, which I've just picked up too, because I was only involved in, I chaired it, but the May 23rd, Mayor and Councillor, the Dundon Wind Farm CEC was a joint meeting with Salt Creek, so maybe an adjustment there might be appropriate.
Right, thanks, Councillor Gleeson. Salt Creek also, that was by Zoom. Yep. Thank you. Any further pickups on that or questions over the Mayor and Councillor's reports? Thank you. If not, we'll move on to 20, the interim CEO meeting schedule and activities report.
Through you, Mayor, general matters.
18?
You've skipped that.
General matters, 18. Sorry. Any general matters? Yeah, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, I was just wondering if we could potentially ask the interim CEO, given in light of the presentation we've had in the public part of the meeting, whether councillors could seek a report on the Folk Festival in Southcombe Park situation, with the view to try and resolve or find solutions.
Right, thanks. Yep, thanks, Councillor Mead. Any further general matters? Yeah, Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Just like to welcome the new Australian citizens from our ceremony today. Earlier today it was a fantastic ceremony at the Mortlake Bowls Club just over the back here, and it was a heartwarming experience to be there and just welcome those 13 citizens to the Moyne Shire, but to Australia. Many dual citizens. Also, I think the comms team have been doing a fantastic job with some recent posts and things on social media recently, so a big shout out to them. There was posts regarding Sorry Day on the 26th of May, which is part of National Reconciliation Week, which recognises and acknowledges the mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who were forcibly removed from their families and communities, which we know as the Stolen Generation. And also the Ida Hobbit Day on the 17th of May, Moyne Shire had an event and also raised the rainbow flags.
Right, thank you, Councillor Lockett. Councillor Purcell?
Yeah, just echo the remarks about the citizenship ceremony this morning. They're always great events, and today's was no exception to that. It's great. It's always great to see happy people, and there were so many happy people there today to receive their citizenship certificates. One of the attendees said he received his certificate
or his citizenship 20 years ago or 20 plus years ago, and he said he got a tree, a gum tree, and he planted his gum tree, and he said he goes to it very regularly, and he said it's a big gum tree now. I thought it may be worth us considering whether we can have an area set aside where we can have everyone who's been a citizen into the Shire probably since Moyne's been made into Moyne, and have a number of gum trees there, and so everyone could have their gum tree, and they could go and have a look at it every now and then, and some sort of reminder of the time and the ceremony they had. It just seemed like a great idea, and he was really emotional about the fact that he had this gum tree that was given to him 20 plus years ago, and I thought it was a moving sort of thing, and maybe we can do something to rekindle that at some time in the future.
Right, thank you, Councillor Purcell. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the 20 or so women who came to Port Fairy last Wednesday, I think, the 1st of June, for a session where we talked with, we had a panel discussion with Councillor Vicky Jelly from Warrnambool City and Councillor Joe Beard from Corangamite Shire. We spoke about the importance of diversity, gender diversity in local government, and spoke about pathways for women into local government, and it was really well attended. Some new faces, which was great to see, and we look forward to having perhaps some similar sessions in other parts of the Shire over the coming months.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Dukas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Could the Shire come up with a press release in relation to the Koroit Hospital? There are a lot of questions being asked, no one's getting any answers. So through the acting CEO and our PR department, press release, something on our website explaining to the community what's happening. Because all I know is it's been torn down, and they're saying, well, that used to be ours. Why isn't it still?
Right, thank you, Councillor Dukas. Look, last Thursday I had the pleasure of attending Mortlake College, the Year 9 and 10's Social Innovations. It was a fantastic afternoon. There were 4 groups of students, 3 in each group, presented. Not only did they raise questions or problems, whether it's rubbish, health, food we're eating, but they had a solution, which was great to see that these Year 9 and 10 students identified the problem and attempted to come up with an answer, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, our youth coordinator, Beck Elms, was ill. Unfortunately, she would have loved to have been there to see the students, and also to Zoe Burrows. I think she was Year 9 and 10 coordinator. So congratulations to them, and Steve from the Terang Mortlake Health Service. He was also in attendance, but a great effort by the Year 9 and 10 students from the Mortlake College and to the associated staff. Thank you. Right. Any other general matters? Yes, Councillor Mead.
Thanks, Mayor. There was just one other that came to me. I just want to congratulate the winners of the Great South West Dairy Awards that was held last month. It's a fantastic night put on by Westvic Dairy, and a huge number in the crowd. Dairy farmers certainly took the opportunity to get out and socialise and get amongst it. Presentation from Jonathan Brown, who's one of the supporters of Dairy Australia, and a great speech by yourself too, Mayor, in support of the Great South West Dairy Awards, which, pleased to say, Council do contribute financially to each year. So I think it's money well spent supporting one of our biggest industries, and well done to all the winners that night.
Yeah, fantastic night. Thank you, Councillor Mead. Right, any further general matters? If not, we'll move, no urgent business. If not, we'll move on to item 20, the interim CEO meeting schedule and activities report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of key things to call out, but then I'll commend the report to you. Some terrific announcements with regards to the infrastructure situation that we've all been talking about today, particularly around the $11.1 million from the federal government with regards to fixed narrow roads in the Shire's north. Voting's now closed, but Port Fairy's been nominated again for the small town category in the Victorian Tourism Council's Top Tourist Award, so we are the current champion. Hopefully we can go back to back. My personal thanks to the councillors that attended the two-day session at Parliament House. It was a terrific couple of days for the Shire in explaining and extolling our advocacy benefits to various ministers and members of the opposition and independents. And we look forward to continuing that advocacy over the course of the year. Look, and I think the Mayor, you've covered off on the other thing that I was to say, so I'll commend the report to you, but happy to take questions as always.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Any discussion? Councillor Lockett.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Question regarding the advocacy and the follow-up from our advocacy work, our recent Zoom meeting regarding the roads. Just if you could give us a little brief update to the community. I think that was one instant good result we got, was a Zoom meeting about the roads, and then we got some further kind of outcomes from that.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lockett. Yes, look, we had a fairly a good high-level discussion with two operatives from the Department of Transport, particularly in around the Woolsthorpe-Haywood Road, but also there was some strong advocacy from councillors with regards to, let's call it, Sun Farmer to Toolong, that sort of bumpy entrance into the town that's causing a lot of angst for residents, and it was acknowledged, and we had the benefit of having one of the operatives in the room who was then going straight out after that meeting to check out several hotspot areas raised by the councillors in that meeting, as well as some strong discussion in and around Princes Highway West. As Councillor Purcell alluded to earlier, we all know that the funding streams are getting harder and they're drying up. We're advocating strongly for the Narrow Roads Fund to be reinstigated, because that's a critical one for this Shire. So there was some strong discussion there, as there was with regards to possible works for Macarthur-Penshurst Road. These are projects that the department has certainly costed, but then it becomes a funding battle, so we're in there advocating for those roads as they arise.
Thank you, Mr Davis. Any questions? Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, I must be reading Councillor Lockett's notes, because the ROV, the Regional Roads Victoria meeting, was one that I wanted to discuss, and probably the only bit that hasn't been mentioned is how do we actually now make sure some of that happens, because there was some good stuff come out of it. I think it was quite a very productive meeting, but we just can't let it die. So how do we just make sure that it still progresses and we do get some movement on some of that work?
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Purcell. We've followed up straight after that meeting with the relevant people at the meeting, because they were going to furnish us with some information. Once we've done that, back through Ms Farrell's area, we'll come back to council and have a discussion on where to next, but certainly the advocacy will only ramp up, not ramp down from this point on, with another election before us.
Thank you. Any further questions on the interim CEO report, please? Meeting schedule. Councillor Dukas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Directing CEO, at our next workshop, will we get an updated report on wind farms?
Through you,
Because
Mayor.
a lot of these are months and months behind.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, you will, Councillor Dukas. That's scheduled, I think, for next week.
For next week, okay.
It's a timing issue, I would say, with this, and when these are produced to when the agenda comes out. It's always, as you said, it's at least about 4 weeks behind in that sense, but you will get up-to-date reporting on that next week.
Because some have even gone back further than last month's meeting. Salt Creek's got nothing in it about the report that was done by the consultant in relation to compliance.
So through you, Mayor, that'll be tabled with you next week.
All right, so I'll hold off until the workshop.
Thank you, Councillor Dukas. Any further questions on the interim CEO's meeting schedule? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
that concludes our ordinary council meeting. Thank you.
Do we go to confidential
let's-
before we